Welcome to Let's Give a Damn, friends. On this podcast, we bring you the stories and wisdom of people who saw something wrong in the world and gave a damn about it. I'm Nick LaPara, and I am absolutely thrilled you're here. Today, we have a wonderful human and damn giver, Josh Radnor, on the podcast. Most of you may recognize that name from a popular show called How I Met Your Mother, but more on that in a moment. Before we talk about our guest, let's talk about you and me and us. I've been away for a month or two on a break. After the tragic loss of one of my closest friends in the world, I decided to take some time to grieve and breathe and reevaluate a shit ton of things, honestly. But we are back. I did put out one or two monologue episodes, one in November and one on New Year's Day. But we are back with conversations from damn givers of all kinds, and I couldn't be more thrilled to get back in the game. I missed speaking to you. I missed speaking with amazing people and sharing those conversations with you. So glad to be back. So anyway, back to Josh Radnor. Josh is most widely known for his role on How I Met Your Mother as Ted Mosby. Full disclosure, I am not a How I Met Your Mother fan. I've probably watched 15 minutes of that show ever. My wife and brother, huge fans. That's probably the 15 minutes I did watch, was walking through the room when they were watching it. But a couple of years ago, I heard a conversation Josh had with Pete Holmes on Pete's podcast. It was a great conversation, and I realized Josh is super smart and thoughtful. But toward the end of their conversation, they talked about porn, and Josh's take intrigued me and resonated deeply with me. So back then, I reached out to him and asked him to be on the show so we could talk about porn and a bunch of other things. He agreed to be on the show, and that's when we started a 2-year-long game of tag, and I could never seem to catch up with him. I would say, hey, Josh, I'm going to be in LA for these days to record podcasts. Are you in? He'd say, I'm in New York working on some show. Then a couple months later, I would say, hey, dude, I'm going to be in New York on these dates. And he would say, I'm back in LA working on another thing. But it finally worked. He finally came all the way to me. He came all the way to Nashville just to hang out with me. That's not true at all. That's a lie. But you'll hear him talk about why he was here. And we got to catch up for a couple of hours on this conversation that you're about to hear. By the way, side note, do you want longer conversations or do you want shorter conversations? Because I just said that this one's going to be over 2 hours. Here's the deal. Longer conversations are always better for getting truly into it. We are able to go deeper. We're able to really push into questions and issues, but they are long. Shorter conversations are good for your daily commute or whatnot, but they remain largely surface level at 30 minutes or 40 minutes in length. So I genuinely would like to hear from you. We have some really amazing guests lined up for this year. Hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or shoot me an email, hello@nicklapara.com. Let me know if you want more shorter or longer conversations. At the end of the day, I'm going to take what you share with me. It's important to me, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, as it were, because I really want this to, I want to feel these conversations out. And typically they get really, really good after an hour, 15, hour and 30 minutes into it. But I do want to hear what you have to say, what's better for you guys. So let me know as soon as possible what you want. Okay. Well, in this conversation, Josh and I discuss Ram Dass, spirituality, pornography, giving a damn, his career, and so very much more. Ready or not, here it comes. Thanks for listening, friends, and here is my conversation with the wonderful Josh Radnor. So what are you doing here? Music stuff, I assume, or maybe not?
Yeah,
my business.
I'm doing some co-writes with people, and also, we don't have to talk about this in the podcast, but
You can even pour in the, if you can pour.
No, I'd rather do this.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I've been having a Nashville thing in my head, just go to Nashville. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I saw a window, and I was like,
You're gonna take it.
I'm gonna go. And then it was one of those things where everyone that I talked to was like, oh, my best friend lives in Nashville, or songwriters I reached out to, everyone was like, yeah, I'm gonna be there. Let's write,
Awesome.
So it just has been super cool.
I think you were with one of my friends, Spencer Crandall.
Oh, yeah, Spencer?
Yeah.
Yeah, we wrote 2 songs together.
Nice.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's great. And I like the songs we wrote. He's really talented. He's really good. He's got a real vibe.
He, I
I didn't know him back when I first found out. Well, I guess I didn't know him.
Do you want to start so we can talk about all this?
Yeah. I did start.
Oh, you did?
Let's get the levels, and then we'll keep in whatever you can put it on or not. I don't. It's up to you. How's your mic? Or how can you hear everything?
I can hear everything. Yeah.
Is that going to work? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. And can you hear me as well?
Yeah.
Let me just make sure.
Let me eat one of these off the record.
You can have all of them. I didn't know if you were like gluten or whatever, so I was like, this kind of checks all the boxes. It's sweet.
Oh.
It's gluten free. It's all the
Anyone
good stuff.
coming from LA, you're like,
yeah, exactly.
I gotta be sure.
No, we're one of the oddballs here that are like, we're vegetarian and we're mostly vegan family with 3 kids. And we love it, and it made more. Before we lived here, we lived in just south of Seattle in Tacoma, and coming here was a big change because there aren't a lot of. It's becoming a little more L.A. and New York ish in terms of.
I'm right
options.
by the Wild Cow though.
Yeah, Wild Cow's amazing.
That place is great.
But that's only one of. So Wild Cow is one of, like 3 really good veggie vegan spots in the whole city. Where
Right.
in L.A. you throw a rock and you hit one.
Yeah.
Here there's Sunflower Cafe, Wild Cow, Gray's.
Yeah, I've been to Grace.
And maybe that's it. Maybe that's it in terms of these places catered to people that eat that way. So it's an interesting city to live in as people that are a little more health conscious. But we're making it
It's
work.
not a dieter's paradise, Nashville.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Like when I got here, I realized like, okay, you're just going to work out a lot in January and get your food under control because it's not going to happen here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not that way. So yeah, Spencer is he used social media really well. My buddy is his manager.
Oh, I met that guy. Yeah, we were at the listening room together.
Yep. Great Jeff Cherry, great dude, great duo.
Yeah.
And he just used social media really well. Coming from, I assume he wasn't well known. He didn't have any, and he just used it. He just used social media incessantly, and now has this huge kind of cult following.
I think he has a bright future ahead of him. Like the way. Some people are creatively like they just throw themselves in full force.
Yep.
And he's like that. And I'm kind of like that, but I'm also like it's been interesting working with Ben Lee all these years because we have totally different speeds in terms of like he'll be like, let's record a video and throw it up online immediately. And I'm like, let's do 5 versions and pick the best and edit it and maybe sleep on it and then maybe we'll throw it up tomorrow. Just because I'm always toggling between being an introvert and an extrovert.
Yeah. And
there are people that are just like, hey, world, this is my Instagram story for the day. And I just can't do that.
You don't do that.
I find that it's not even like obsessive privacy, although I am a fairly private person and I'm weirdly self-disclosing all at the same time.
Sure.
It's just like these tensions in my life, And I sometimes, I look at someone like Spencer, or I wrote a couple songs with this awesome guitarist, songwriter, Molly Tuttle. Do you know Molly Tuttle?
I've heard of her. I don't know her.
She's amazing. We wrote 2 really good songs together. And I said, the first one we filmed us singing it together, and the second one I just filmed her singing it. And both her and Spencer, and maybe, they're younger than me, but they're like, sure, of course, not only can you film this? Like, of course you can film this.
Yep.
Like, yeah, of course. Like,
yep.
It's just assumed that like we're gonna put something out. My face is gonna be on it. Like, I don't know why I'm still a little shy around all that.
Do you think it's generational? Because it might be. I mean, the highest paid YouTubers are kids. Like literally, it's an 8-year-old kid, $26 million last year.
Yeah.
And he just he's 8 years old, reviews toys, just does dumb shit
insane,
on YouTube. And you've got the Paul brothers, right, who have made millions and millions of dollars on YouTube, just acting like total idiots all the time.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe people that didn't know life before social media, maybe they just, I don't know, don't give a shit.
I think it has something to do with also like growing up online, and then also like they've done these surveys on like privacy with like who cares about privacy, and like younger people don't care about it because they've given away their information from day one.
Yep.
So that's not a concern of theirs, which is super strange. I mean, if you actually think like I get, everyone's doing 23andMe, and I have this weird paranoia.
I won't do it.
I have this weird paranoia. Like, I don't know that the government or whoever should have our genetic material. I think they're going to start framing people for murders.
Yeah.
What I mean?
Well,
like,
somewhere in the fine print, you agree to sell all of your shit to. They can sell to as many people as they want to.
I know.
Right?
And do you ever read those things? Like, I click agree to terms.
Yep.
On everything.
And I know that 23andMe and Ancestry.com, they're making twice or three times the amount of money on you because they just go and sell it to whoever, you know, the government or I don't know. I don't know who gets it, but I will not do it. My brother did it. It was fascinating to see. Well, a few of my siblings have, and it's fascinating to see. I guess I'm similar to their makeup, I guess, with very little variance. But I'm like, I won't do it. I'd rather not.
I feel like this podcast is going to descend into like a bunker libertarian kind of secessionist.
It's going to go all over the place. We're going to talk pornography. We're going to talk giving a damn. We're going to talk some of your career, Ram Dass. I've got a lot of thoughts. I've got a few scribbled notes, but a lot of thoughts because I've been let's just get into it because I have so much that I want to.
Can I ask you? I haven't done I know I knew enough about you to say yes to this.
Yeah,
just because I thought you seemed like you were interested in areas that I was interested in. But like, what brought you to this? Like, where have you been? And your listeners probably know this, but
yeah. So I had my first career was 14 years in the nonprofit world.
Okay,
all over the world, mostly in the Christian nonprofit space. I did all kinds of things: orphan work, water projects, tons of things.
Yeah,
and I left that world 3 years ago because I am very tired of the nonprofit world, and I'm also not as bullish on it. I think there are better ways to do a lot of the work that we're trying to get done.
Yeah.
And so I left it to try my hand at being an entrepreneur. And so that happened simultaneously with leaving Tacoma, Washington to move here to be closer to our families. We never wanted to live in the South, but this is a great city closer to our families.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, in my quest to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, we had a little bit of money in savings, 3 kids, moved here with nothing. Like I had no prospects other than this small network that I was going to grow. And I said, well, I want to learn people's stories. I want to hear people's stories, hear what they're doing, what excites them, what they give a damn about. And I had this, the previous year I had kind of received this revelation, let's give a damn, because people use give a damn mostly they use give a damn mostly in a derogatory way, like I don't give a damn about something.
Right.
And I wanted to put a positive spin and also a community spin on it. Let's give a damn.
Yeah.
It's not just me telling you to go do something. I want to do it with you. Like, let's do this together.
Right.
And so it just started, and I had some good fortune. I got blessed early on. Some friends shared some of their connections. And so I had Rainn Wilson agreed to be on episode I think it was 10. Mm-hmm. So really early on, and went out and met him, and he's been very generous and kind with me over the years. He's a very nice guy. He and his wife Holiday are both amazing. And I just felt like I wanted to just keep doing it. I didn't know what the end was. What was I going to do, 10, 20, and we've done 100 and something now.
Wow.
And it's turned into, there's a consulting arm of Let's Give a Damn where we help companies figure out how to holistically and strategically impact the world instead of just like year-end gifts and like haphazard volunteer days.
Yeah.
I also speak under this brand, and we're starting local chapters, kind of a la Creative Mornings, local Let's Give a Damn chapters all over the place right now.
That's awesome.
We've got about 10 or 12 cities on board, hoping to hit 50 by the end of next year.
Wow.
Get people, instead of just listening and absorbing the information, like actually doing stuff.
Yeah.
Because they want to be, there's something about this brand that people, I haven't fully figured it out yet. It's still very small in the grand scheme of the world and things, but people seem to want to be a part of Let's Give a Damn. It's something that they're attracted to. So trying to figure out how to maximize our impact. And so that's kind of how, and the thing, I was listening to you on Pete Holmes 4 years ago, 2015. And I remember, so I'm not a How I Met Your Mother guy.
Sure.
I don't think I've ever watched an episode.
Fantastic.
I
prefer it that way.
my wife and brother, they fanatically watched it, and they were so pissed at the ending.
Yeah.
They were, I don't know where people fare on how the thing wrapped up, but they were two that were big fans of the whole show, big fans of your character, but like they were at the end, like, fists up in the air, like how, why did it end that way? So they were big fans of it. But then, so I didn't know, I knew who you were just generally. Oh, you're on How I Met Your Mother and some other stuff. But then I heard you on that podcast, and a lot of things in there. You talked about your spirituality and many things through there that attracted me. Yeah. But in the last 20 minutes of the episode, you guys talked about porn. Like, it just talked about porn. And I thought, man, I want to talk about that with Josh at some point.
Sure.
So that's when I reached out, which was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And so
can I share something with you about
please.
when you were talking about being in the nonprofit space for so long, have you ever heard? Do you know the poet David Whyte?
No.
I think he's Irish, or Irish or British, but he's an incredible poet, and he tells this story. It might have been on Being. I'm sure you've heard that.
Oh yeah,
podcast.
Krista Tippett, amazing. I'm gonna write that name. You said David Whyte.
Yeah, Whyte. Phenomenal poet. His poems are just incredible. But he was working in the nonprofit space like in his 20s, and because he wanted to help the world, save the world, and he was exhausted in a way that was almost like, it was like this bone deep exhaustion, but it was like he was confused. He wasn't making sense. His orders to his team were like, he was just off the rails, exhausted. And he was having drinks one night with this Benedictine monk named David Stendhal Rust, who's a really interesting guy. And I think they like got together and like, like read scripture and drink.
Sure,
that was like how
that's
they,
not a bad thing.
How they hung out. And the monk David Rust told him, he said, David, the cure or the cure for exhaustion is not always rest. The cure for exhaustion is probably in your case wholeheartedness. And he said, you want to be a poet, but you're in the nonprofit space. And if you find the thing that you can throw your whole heart in, you won't be exhausted anymore. You'll just have limitless reserves of energy. And I found that to be
amazing.
True for me. And a lot of other people I tell that to are like, oh no, that's true. Like when you're fully engaged in a way that you're passionate and you love it, you can work around the clock.
Yep.
Like if I've got my hooks in a song, like I don't want to go to sleep or a script.
Yep.
I just have energy for it.
Yep.
And it's the times where you're when you're doing a should, like I should be doing this or I should like this.
Yep.
Like sometimes your energy just get depleted.
Yeah, that's actually fantastic, and I want to go find that conversation, and I want to learn more about Whyte. But for me, it was that, it was also I was just sick of accomplishing someone else's dreams.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So are you into the Enneagram at all?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm an 8, like a hardcore 8.
Yeah.
Challenger, protector.
That's a nonprofit kind of number in a lot of ways.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so much there. But I was getting exhausted because I had all these like pent up, dreams and ambitions and things I wanted to do. And for all of my career, I was in a very blessed, I can't complain, I was in a very blessed, situation where I never, in 14 years, never had to look for a job. I would always get promotions and raises and move from here to there because I was good at it. But it was like, again, it was me being good at building someone else's thing. And it was good work. So I just kept keeping on.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I was like, I've got 3 kids. And I want to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so that's the last 3 years have been. And now it doesn't. To your point, to White's point, I don't feel exhausted. I feel exhausted about certain things, but now that I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, and it's still very in its infancy. I'm failing more than I'm winning by a long shot.
Yeah.
But I'm doing what I want to be doing in the way that I want to be doing it, and I'm bringing the people I want to bring around me to do those things.
Yeah.
And so it just feels so fucking.
And then you got to interrogate what you mean by failure. Because like most 100%. Success is like born of little failures,
100%.
And course corrections and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, John, I never quote this man, but because I remember him from growing up, John Maxwell, the like inspirational speaker. He's this like inspiration, but he had a book that I read when I was a teenager that always stuck with me. This phrase, like failing forward, like fail forward, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna fail, and I'm not
part
scared.
Of the deal.
It's totally part of the deal, and we should not be scared of it or afraid of it. We embrace it and use it to our advantage.
Truly successful people are very at peace with failure and really have a lot of failure in their, like even corporate, like Fortune 500 people, like they all have failed companies behind them. They actually, Ben told me about this study that was really fascinating about people who earn over, let's say, I don't know, $100,000 a year or like who are even more like in real top earning kind of echelons versus people that are way less high earners. And they asked them their relationship to failure. And the low earners said that they did have a failure and they considered it the end of the line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that the high earners were people who just considered it like a stop on the way.
Yeah, a little speed bump.
Yeah. So I consider like getting a good relationship to failure to be like one of the primary things we can do in life.
I agree.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
So you're before we get into the meat of this conversation, you're Columbus. Let's go back to like your origins, just for people that
Sure, yeah.
that haven't Wikipedia'd you,
Yeah.
know generally who you are, but don't know where you came from. Because I always loved the backstory.
Yeah.
Family or lack thereof, where you came from, how you got where you're going. Cause it's huge. It's hugely influential in who you are.
Yeah.
And what I know about you is you come from Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And so you're in show business. Like you've been in show business for all of your career?
I mean, since I got out of it's 20 years. Yeah, I got out of school in 99.
But you didn't come from a family that was in show business.
No, but it's a weird, when you kind of like do a little investigative work in your family, and you realize that there were thwarted artistic ambitions all throughout my family. There were people that wanted to be actors that were told they weren't allowed. I actually, I have a second, or my mom's second cousin is a huge producer in Hollywood. I've become friends with her. But it's kind of lurking around my family. My family is very creative. My father was a retired trial lawyer, but he's a sculptor.
Yeah.
He plays the banjo. My mom plays guitar and piano, not virtuosically, is that the word?
Yeah.
But she's also a painter. We're a creative bunch.
Yeah, that's a good distinction, because I think a lot of times we can say, well, that you said kind of thwarted ambitions, failed actor. Somebody said you couldn't be that, but then there are other ways to do it. You can have a job, make a really good living, and a good life for your family, community, and then still do that thing that you always wanted to do in a way that you don't give a shit what anybody has to say about it. You don't need permission. You don't need permission to go in your garage and paint.
Right.
Or play the banjo or sculpt.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to make this your main thing.
It's weird, though. I have a thing where I want everything to be my main thing.
Oh,
like I don't.
Yeah, I feel that.
I don't have. I'm a 3 with a 4-wing Enneagram, so I've got like that. There's also that tension. I've got like the achiever thing where I need to kind of like publicly like really be out there and achieve, and then I've got this individualist. Kind of light a candle and journal and get all kind of feelingy.
Yeah.
But like when I started writing songs, it was kind of like, well, how do I figure out how to like do this in front of a lot of people and make money from it and do, you know what I mean? But I also I loved it in such a way that it's hard for me to sit. I think a big part of my personality is very much like coming home from school and being like, look what I made. You know what I mean? I still feel like I'm doing that a little bit. Like, look what I made. And there's a sweet impulse to it. And there's also like a needy love me impulse to it. Everything has a shadow. And but that's a big part of when I make things, I really want to share them.
That's good.
I think so.
That's great.
Yeah. I have other friends who are really creative and won't share their thing. Yeah. Because they're so afraid of it not being whatever, I like if I write a good verse of a song, I'll just share you the verse. Like I don't need things to be in their final form or completed. Like I get very excited about process.
How much of that is there ego involved in that, or is it purely like
there's ego involved in everything?
Sure.
So I don't know. Its fingerprints are on everything.
Yeah.
But
well, just is it more like, hey, I want to show you how good I am at this, or I love you enough as a person or as my fans, whatever level people are experiencing what you're showing them? Is it just like this is good and I want you to experience it as well?
It's hard to tease out what is what. Like,
sure.
I think that it's more like I get tickled by the fact that I can actually make things, and if they're good, I get I don't know if pride is the right word, but I get like excited that there's something that I can. I mean, the thing that's thrilling about songwriting for me right now is that it's like I can spend a couple hours and have something to show you that's almost in its final form, whereas a movie takes like 2 years. So, I mean, just filmed entertainment takes so long. I don't think people understand how long it takes.
Yeah.
But I think. I don't know. My ego's involved in all of it.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't, But I also think that I'm gonna have a better chance. I give a damn about making things.
Yeah.
So like I'm gonna have a better chance of affecting the world in a positive way by writing a song than I am like building houses.
Yeah.
Because I'm not good at building houses.
Yeah.
I would be like a not good contributor to that project, but I could write a song about the people who are building the houses that they could put on the video that shows, you know what I mean? Like,
totally.
I kind of you got to figure out where, like, I'm a storyteller, and if and how can I put that to good use?
How did you get out of Columbus to to become who you are today? How did that happen?
Well, it's weird. I started.
Columbus is cool now. I don't know how it was
cool
back
now.
then.
It is. It's like Nashville without the music.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
a very cool middle sized kind of American town. Great food, good art scene. Like you can really move to Columbus and have like a super fun, cool life. When I was there, it was just a little more like, I mean, it was the capital and there were the Buckeyes and everything, but it was kind of, Cleveland and Cincinnati felt like bigger metropolises than Columbus,
Sure.
but Columbus has grown a lot. But I did a couple musicals in high school, and then I found my way to this children's theater called Columbus Junior Theater that we would do musicals, 16 to 21-year-olds. So all the best people from high schools would compete to try to get a spot in this summer thing. And I did 3 summers of that, and it was really transformative and supremely fun. But I thought we were all going to like move to New York and be actors, and like 3 of us did. I mean, my best friend from there went to Juilliard, and he's an amazing actor. But a lot of, and another one's a really high-level stage manager. But a lot of people just are back in Columbus. A lot of my high school friends that I thought we were all going to like go to big cities or like, they married our friends, and they had kids, and they live a couple blocks from where we grew up, and they have a really nice life, and they're not restless around that.
Sure.
But for me, I was always dreaming about getting to New York and being a theater actor. Like that was my vision. That was where I saw myself. So I went to Kenyon College in Ohio, which is a small liberal arts college, which was really good for me. It was like I studied everything, but I spent a ton of time in the theater department. I was in the improv group. It was just a really good, healthy mix. And my dad went there, and it had this great theater department. So it was kind of like splitting the difference. Like I had to engage in some very high level manipulation with my parents to get them on board with me as an actor.
Yeah.
And one of the ways was like I went to Kenyon. So I went to my dad's college, but it had this great theater department. So I ended up declaring a drama major. So it was like I was doing this thing that he loved, which was getting a liberal arts education at the school he loved, but I was doing it my own way, and then I got into NYU to the grad acting program at Tisch, which is like, really, it's hard to get in there. There's like 700 or 800 people audition for like 17 or 18 slots.
Sure.
I got one of them, and I went. And at that point, I had done so much summer theater, and so like I really took it seriously. Like I went to grad school the way a doctor goes to medical school or a lawyer goes to law school. Like I was a very pre-professionally focused person. In terms of like trying to figure out like how do you do this? How do you have a sustainable career as an actor? And I was never someone who paid all that much attention to like the terrifying unemployment statistics. I had kind of a schmucky uncle who he said, "What are you doing next year?" I said, "I'm going to grad school for acting." And he said, "I hope you're good at waiting tables." Like I didn't hear a lot of that, but like, I had to swat away a lot of like cultural stuff around like, oh, you're going to be a poor,
Sure.
You're going to be, you can't click 2 nickels together. And I just never let that in. I always
Did
thought,
that ever happen?
I got out of school and I had a very good showcase. So you do these, you do 2 scenes for like 2 3-minute scenes this one afternoon in New York City for every casting director in New York and an agent in New York comes. So it's this very high level day.
Yeah. Kind of like the draft for like the NFL or
exactly. So that's all they see. They see 6 minutes of your work. And I was pretty tactical about that. Like over the years, I watched people do the scenes and I thought, if you can do comedy, you better do comedy. Because, I noticed like Tennessee Williams scenes out of context in that, on a beautiful afternoon where they're sitting inside, they just want to be entertained.
Yeah, sure.
So I did 2 really funny scenes. I think I had like 20 agent meetings. I met every casting director in town. I kind of got to choose what agency. And I went with this agency that I was with for 14 years. They were really they were big enough to handle me. I was nervous. I thought they were, you're battling a certain amount. Even if you believe in yourself, you're battling a certain amount of imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Because I still was like expecting people to be like, "You're just a Jewish kid from Columbus, Ohio. Get out of here," But like that's the cool thing about show business, even though there are, it is kind of who you know. There's also, especially television, even in that day, I don't know how it is now, but like it was much more meritocratic. Like you could walk into a room and just be the guy. And television is still much more than movies kind of interested in breaking people. Like television likes a new face.
Sure.
Whereas I feel like movies is kind of like, no, we like faces we know. Yeah. So I got out of school. I had signed with this great agent before I even signed with her, I started understudying this really interesting, weird off-Broadway play at Manhattan Theater Club, so I got my equity card. The actor ended up leaving, so I took over for 2 or 3 weeks in this play off-Broadway with this like major cast. And then I just started working. I did an Eric Bogosian play at Baltimore Center Stage. I didn't work for 6 months after that. Started smoking cigarettes again, feeling sorry for myself, then got a really good play. Then I started getting little TV nibbles, like little guest stars. And then it just kind of took off from there. Like, I think my parents helped me with rent, like my first year only. They like, not all of it, but like they gave me they pitched in a little bit. And then since, I guess, like 2000, like 99, 2000, like I've made my living as an actor, which is,
that's great.
It's pretty crazy. Like last spring rolled around and I realized it had been 20 years since I got out of NYU, and it had been 20 years of making my living as an actor, which is statistically very difficult to do. And I wanted to mark it and give myself some time to like celebrate a little bit and say like, you know what, this is not a small thing. The issue with show business, or one of the many issues with show business,
the issue,
and it's probably not just show business, it's like free market capitalist society will always have, there's always someone farther than you, ahead of you, that is doing the thing you want, getting the roles you want. There's so much, it's kind of rigged for your dissatisfaction. But like, I sometimes play this game like, what would 16-year-old me think? Do you know what I mean? Like, 16-year-old me would be, if I had a guest spot on a television show one time, 16-year-old me would be ecstatic. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The fact that I was on a hit show for 9 years, that I've been on Broadway a couple times, that I did a world premiere of a Richard Greenberg play at Lincoln Center. Like, there's so many things that, on top of the fact that I'm now writing songs, I directed 2 movies that went to Sundance. But I say all that not to like list my many accomplishments, but more to say like I still deal with a lot of professional dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
And that's where ego comes in, because you're like, they say comparisons are odious, but because it's so tempting to compare ourselves and find ourselves wanting.
Oh yeah.
And there's also might be like a healthy amount of dissatisfaction that is what keeps us moving. So I'm always curious, like, what's the healthy amount of dissatisfaction?
It's hard to distinguish.
It is very hard.
What is just like healthy dissatisfaction versus comparison now, because we have so many inputs. So many, like, social media has done way more harm than good. There are way more unhealthy people mentally, physically, because of social media. And just not 50 years ago, it was like, do your fucking thing. Like, you do your thing. You have your people around you encouraging you, walking through stuff with you. And now at our fingertips, every other person that's doing my thing out there, right? Podcasting, speaking, consulting, like, I can look and be like, well, their shit looks like it's working.
But I try to be wary of like not overly sentimentalizing the past as this friction-free, blissful time. Certainly, people drank themselves to death 50 years ago.
Yep.
Certainly, people committed suicide 50 years ago.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a kind of, I think now we see our despair a little more clearly. Like the fact that we know what's happening in different parts of the world that we used to not have access to.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's like, we curate our lives to such a degree, like I think it's cool when like, actresses will like show, this is what I look like with no makeup, or when they drop the veil, like we all, you put a filter over the thing, you like you take 3 pictures and pick the best one, you only make it look like your life is one permanent nonstop party or vacation, and it's just not true. That's one of the things. You get my newsletters, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So one of the things I do in those, and maybe we could plug that if people want to sign
100%.
up. I do these.
I'll link it. They're amazing.
Yeah, these emails every 2 months or so is when I get them out. But I write an essay kind of about what's going on, or what I'm thinking about, or what I'm struggling with, or and then I link a bunch of recommendations of things that I've been inspired by lately. But one of the things I really like about that, and what people seem to respond to, is I gave this speech in India, in Mumbai, this Ink Talk.
Yeah, I'll link to that as well.
Yeah,
it's
cool. But anytime where I can say like, hey, I'm literally living my dream and life is super hard. Like it's not. I think that there's this myth, especially in America, but I think it's permeated the globe, that if you get certain things, it will inoculate you against despair or craving or sadness. And it's just a fiction. It's just a fiction that I feel like we can't demolish it frequently enough.
Yep.
Because if that was the case, there would be no drug addiction or suicidal ideation or despair among wealthy people and famous people.
And there's so much of it.
And there's so much of it.
Yeah.
So you've got to go, I thought it was a really interesting moment. It was like that really hard week when Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain died by suicide. It was just like, wow. I mean, talk about two people who had more access, more resources. Like you couldn't, any dinner party or fancy gala or whatever your idea of what it fancy looks like. There's that Dave Chappelle joke, which is super dark, but like Anthony Bourdain, the guy with the best job in the world.
Yep.
He traveled around the world eating the best and most interesting food, talking to people. And again, that's a reductive idea when someone who clearly is dealing with like massive clinical depression. But I think it's, for me, to remember that life is not supposed to be like just the opiate kind of epidemic, right? The question isn't why are people taking all these painkillers. The point is, why is there so much pain?
Yeah.
Like, why is there so much pain?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on in this fabulously wealthy country that, something is rotten.
Yep.
and
true.
And I'm trying to both individually figure out like how I am a product of that and even contributing to that on some level. How I Met Your Mother, as dearly low I love that show and love a lot about it, it peddled a lot of fiction in terms of like, I hear people talking about, oh, you taught me how to be a romantic or love. And sometimes I think that my character especially like peddled a lot of like very addictive, obsessive fantasies around love and relationship and stuff that I really disavow, you know? And I have to look at the fact that I really contributed to this whole generation thinking that, and by the way, I'm not an unromantic person. Like I believe in love, but I believe in it in a more sober kind of adult way. Not the kind of movie like, oh, I saw her across the room and I just knew, because a lot of times that can be like craziness. Like I've had women who crush on me. I mean, I've had some like stalker situations, like some really scary stuff, and they crush on me in a way that like Ted would crush on a girl, and they think because they're having these feelings that I am the person for them. And it's like, I can assure you I am not. And I don't know you. It's freaky.
That's you having been on a show like that, which again, also, I try not to shit too much on, I don't watch a lot of TV. And when I do, it has to be like meaningful, whatever that means. I'm doing air quotes, like a documentary or
be good for you,
or substantive. Like even if it's a comedy or whatever, it like has good morals or like, talks about community, whatever. And so that on the one hand, your show gave just unadulterated joy to so many.
So many
people they loved it. My wife, brother loved just pure love for it. But also it did give this like false. Maybe not false. Is that the right word? Like a false picture of like what life is really like. Friends.
Well, it's manicured. It's like any show that takes place in New York City, those people cannot afford that apartment.
Friends,
just the realistic kind of thing of like real estate in New York. No one gets it right. One of the reasons, this is kind of interesting, this is very inside baseball, but like the reason New York apartments have to be bigger, this is more for movies or single camera, is you need room for the crew. So if you actually shot a small New York City apartment would really look like, you wouldn't have any room to put the cameras and the crew.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. The one movie that did it well, I thought, was Peter Hedges' movie Pieces of April. Did you see that movie with Katie Holmes?
No.
It's a fantastic movie. I really love it. But her apartment and the apartments in there really look like small New York apartments, like they are. That's just one example.
Sure.
But when like any filmed entertainment, it's going to cut out the boring bits, right? Like so much of life is boring. That's it. David Foster Wallace, at the end of his life, was writing The Pale King, and he was trying to get his, gigantic mind around this issue of boredom, which is such a big thing in our lives, But the very nature of entertainment is it cuts out the boring bits. It's supposed to it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's an enthusiastic kind of diversion,
Yep.
right? So anytime we want our lives to be like the movies, we get in a little trouble because we're not honoring the down moments,
The realness of
the
life.
realness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if we'd want to watch a play that was real. We want to compress and feel like these are the most interesting bits that you're watching.
We wouldn't watch it because we're experiencing it in real time and we're looking for an alternative to that.
Yeah.
Something that we can
It's kind of like, how did the Truman Show become like the actual hit, like the hit TV show? Because it's not that interesting to watch people go about their lives. It's interesting to watch people, there's a, in Passover, there's these 4 questions that the kids are supposed to ask. And, it's essentially, why is this night different than all other nights? And it's a really useful thing for a dramatist to ask themselves, like, why is this night the one we're showing out of many, many nights in these people's lives?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Ram Dass.
Yeah.
Just passed away. An amazing, amazing human. And you met him.
Yeah.
Which is pretty special.
Yeah, I got to be with him in Maui a couple times.
There's only a few spiritual teachers that I would love to spend time with.
Yeah.
It was one of them.
Yeah.
Richard Rohr is one of them.
Yeah, who I've also gotten to spend time with. Yeah.
Okay. I will soon. I will soon.
Yeah.
I have connections too. I'm like 1 degree of separation.
Richard
away
is
from
my
Richard.
lighthouse.
He's amazing.
Spiritually.
He's
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely.
Did you read? Do you read his books?
Yeah,
Did you read Universal Christ?
Yeah, I thought it was a masterpiece.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it continued. Well, I shouldn't say it changed my whole life, but it did. It actually put a lot of things, because I've been a Christian all my life.
Yeah.
Since I was literally a baby. And I've been through multiple versions of it.
Yeah.
First, very like fundamentalist, conservative, like almost cult.
Order. You're in the
cult-like.
order box.
I mean,
that he talks about.
Yeah. Yes. So many rules, like so many just made up out of the blue,
Yeah.
like bullshit, like rules for how to live your life. Very constricting. And then went through multiple iterations to where I am now, which very much aligns with the vision of Universal Christ, that
Yeah.
book, and kind of what he's pitching and the hope and the freedom that provides for life. It's wonderful. It's beautiful.
It's funny how there's this idea that like a kind of fundamentalist, any sort of fundamentalism, right? Which is born of this idea that of a literal interpretation of text, And I love how Richard says, like, literalism will yield the least fruitful reading. You'll get the least amount from reading it literally. It's kind of like, I don't know, like reading a fairy tale literally and being like, well, the wolf ate the grandmother and the Little Red Riding Hood and spat them both out and they're fine. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not really what the story's about.
Yep.
So, but his vision in Universal Christ is so massive. Like, someone told me this great thing. Their pastor said that Christianity is an amazing thing. It's just too bad it's never been given a real shot.
Wow.
like to really follow what Jesus was up to.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell.
Yep.
Is so radical.
Yep.
Like he says, you got to leave your family to follow me, and that. How we turn this into like a family values religion? That's actually not what it's about.
That's
like he's
insane,
saying,
for sure.
leave your family.
Yep. And
to follow me.
Yep.
And a lot of what I can tell, and this is not exclusive to Christianity, but a lot of religion is control mechanisms. It's almost, I learned in Israel the commandment about taking the Lord's name in vain. The Hebrew is lo tisa et shem Hashem Elokecha, like, thou shalt not carry the Lord's name in vain, which literally means, don't use God for false ends.
It's beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is such a
and crazy.
more interesting thing than saying, don't say God damn it.
Yeah. 100%.
Like it's so much bigger.
Yeah.
And we're all in violation on some level of that commandment, especially in
time.
religion, using religion to guilt people, using religion to condemn people, shame people. I think that's a violation of that commandment.
Yeah. It's happening at the highest levels of our country right now.
Oh, the biggest.
I don't know if I've ever seen, or I guess I'm young enough that there's a lot of presidents and a lot of governments before me, iterations of governments, but I don't know that there's ever been a government that hoard the Jesus and the Bible in the way that this
Well, I mean, I'm a little older than you, and I will say that Reagan did it and George W. Bush did it. The same.
The same.
I
So
mean,
what's different about this one then that feels so much more belligerent and
I think
like,
what's different
hurtful?
about it is that their chosen prophet is so odious and so unchristian.
So easy to, yeah.
He's so unchristian in so many ways.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know?
Yeah.
And you read the Christianity Today
Oh, yeah.
piece, right? I thought it was excellent.
Yep.
It was excellent.
Fantastic.
And I saw that guy, the guy who wrote it, was interviewed. He said, I'm not making a political judgment about the guy. No. I'm making a moral judgment about the guy. And he's a failure.
Yeah.
He is an absolute moral failure by any judgment of any world religion would say, like, these are our precepts, these are our virtues. And he's doing none of them.
Yeah.
Other than checking off in a very politically calculated way, this is what this base of mine, this unshakable block of people that believe I'm, this unholy but prophet messenger, and the whole thing about God uses, people like
flawed people, yeah. Look at David, and all these different,
But if someone's, on the other side of the aisle also flawed, they're from the devil and they must be destroyed. And, I think there is an awakening, especially among young evangelicals or like ex-evangelicals. Would you consider yourself kind of?
No, I'm still, well, I was, yes, I would say I'm still fully like Christian.
Yeah.
I don't want to participate in
anything
evangelical.
Are you a Rachel Held Evans fan?
Huge Rachel Held Evans fan. Yeah.
So I read 2 of her books. I read Faith Unraveled, the first one, and Searching for Sunday.
Yeah.
Those books are so beautiful.
Yep.
Like I can't recommend them highly enough.
Yep.
And I'm a Jewish guy reading. I just thought they were. To me, I'm really interested in anyone who I sense a very sincere longing for like truth and peace and community and like God, those are all euphemisms, I think, for God. Like, and she was just, it's so tragic,
super tragic.
Yeah,
I mean, far too soon.
Yeah, oh my God! But what a fierce mind she had.
Yeah,
like absolute ferocious thinker, and hilarious too.
And really I just hate, one of the mysteries of the world is why does she go and other people stay for decades longer? That's hard. Like you look at Ram Dass, you're like, dude, he lived a full life. Like, sure, we'd love to keep him for another 100, but he lived a full life.
Yeah.
And then you have Rachel's who, I mean, talk about her in 40 more years, like the wisdom.
I know.
Like she would have been like she already is a prophetess that will remember for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But, double her age and her experience and her wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's always tragic when people like that are.
It's interesting though, because
I
think I had seen her name a couple times, but I didn't know about her until her death. And I started reading because of RHE, that hashtag.
Yep.
And I was brought to tears by a lot of those testimonials. And I thought, who is this woman that did all this stuff for people, that moved these people and brought them back to the church and helped them redefine their relationship to God and religion, and that's when I started reading her.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, she had to die so I could discover her.
No,
but in her death, she probably converted a lot of people, and I use that term very broadly.
No, I get it.
She probably brought a lot of people to her words in a different way.
I know dozens of people in my own personal circle that didn't give a shit about her before. And now they're like huge fans.
Yeah.
Like bought all the books, are reading it, devouring it.
Yeah.
Post death. So that's a beautiful thing about legacy, right? Is that we don't know the impact we're having until we're gone, and then things start springing up, or they don't, or we have a legacy not worth talking about, and people just.
Did you read David Brooks's book, The Road to Character?
Yes.
Great book.
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah.
But the that thing at the beginning, which he actually got from a rabbi, this Lithuanian rabbi, Soloveitchik, about the distinction between resume virtues and eulogy virtues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that a lot in terms of like the resume virtues, obviously like, this is the car I drive, this is the job I have, this is how much money I make, this is what the peacock feathers, this is what makes me interesting in a capitalist society or valuable. And then the eulogy virtues are how will people talk about you when you're dead? Were you charitable? Were you kind? Were you a good friend? Did you show up for people in emergencies? All these things. And, when I get obsessed with resume virtues, I know I'm in the ego, but the eulogy virtues are like the sturdier.
It's the real stuff.
It's the real stuff. And Yeah, it's just the real stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did Ram Dass mean to you, and what do you think? Again, we're just talking about legacy now, and,
Yeah.
again, he'll be somebody that everybody talks about for millennia to come. But like, what are we losing by not having him here anymore as a spiritual teacher? There's lots of spiritual teachers, all different persuasions, but he brought something unique to the table.
I don't think we are losing anything because, like, if you read, a lot of his writing was about death. And a lot of it was about, he would say stuff
you're bringing that up. Yeah.
Like dying is absolutely safe. Dying is not an outrage. Like, I don't think he was stressed about death. Like,
No.
I think he was, and it's interesting. He told me this, but he's written about this in his books, that when he had his stroke in 1997, was it? I think he had a stroke. He was, in this kind of twilight consciousness. He knew something really bad was happening. And he was conscious, and he knew, and he said he didn't have one single spiritual thought. Like, he didn't have a single spiritual thought. He half his life spent, trying to
devouring this, embodying
all
this
of
stuff.
it.
Yep.
And he didn't have a thought that was spiritual, and he realized that he was like a spiritual infant, and he had some real work to do. He was also at the time writing a book about aging, and he realized, I didn't know anything about aging. I didn't know anything about aging until the stroke. And I tweeted about this, but he said to me the first time I sat with him, he said, the stroke has just been so wonderful because it taught me that I'm not my body.
It's wild.
And I thought I was my body, and it was a lesson I needed to learn. And to me, Ram Dass, I didn't tweet this, but I just thought it would be funny that, to me, he's like the patron saint of suburban Jews who give up everything to find God. Because he's this Jewish guy from this, prominent family and outside of Boston. And he was a Harvard professor of psychology with Timothy Leary. And they got in trouble because they were, going deep down the psychedelic rabbit hole. He means a lot to me as both a spiritual seeker and as a psychedelic pioneer, because psychedelics have been really important to me in my journey. And but a serious intentional use of psychedelics, not like a ravey,
not
kind
a
of thing.
hippie
There's nothing wrong with that, actually, and I've done some of that. But the
kind of new conversation that's happening.
Yeah, and that started for me, and we can talk about that. But that started for me in 2007 with ayahuasca and stuff. But when I started learning about when I found myself in this world and feeling such at home in that world, I realized that I was standing on the shoulders of all these interesting people. I was reading Aldous Huxley, and Daniel Pinchbeck helped me quite a bit in those early years. But Ram Dass is someone that if you're interested in psychedelics and you're interested in spirituality, you're going to stumble across Ram Dass. Who was named Richard Alpert. But for people who don't know, he was this Harvard psychologist, and he and Timothy Leary were doing these experiments with psilocybin and with LSD, and things were, they thought, getting out of control, and they were both fired. And they set up this like kind of hippie commune in Millbrook, I think, in New York. But Ram Dass ended up going to India and meeting a guru called Neem Karoli Baba, who became his, or the Maharaji, not to be confused with the Maharishi, who's different, but the Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba, was his guru. And he was and he gave him the name Ram Dass, which means servant of Ram. And he came back, with a big beard, wearing, beads and robes. And he told me this story that his father picked him up from the airport when he first got back to India. And he came out wearing beads and robes and this long beard. And his father was like, "Get in the car. Like, someone's going to see you." He was humiliated by how his son looked. And, but he also, he wrote this book, Be Here Now, which is this counterculture classic, and he was really, not a lot of people, I don't know how many people know this, but he was a person who took the wisdom of the East and brought it here. Like, he was a perfect ambassador for a kind of non-dual, Advaita, they call it, non-dual consciousness. And he was a beautiful teacher, and I think he was a good man too. Like, he was a very sincere, very good writer, very beautiful, clear writer. And he wrote a lot of books, and he was just trying to be of use. And I think he was really asking to be awakened.
He accomplished that, the useful.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, and then I think the stroke that he had in 1997. There's a beautiful documentary about it called Fierce Grace.
It's on No, that's not the one on Netflix.
Oh, there was another one, a new one that's
yeah.
on Netflix. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. But his stroke was kind of the last chapter of his life that was, it's amazing. It was 97, so he was 22 years. He
ago,
had this aphasia, he was in a wheelchair. Being with him was very interesting because he can't speak fast at all. And it takes him a while. And I've seen him speak before crowds. He asks, don't help him. He knows what he's saying. He's not looking for a word.
Sure.
He's just trying to form it. There was something about being with him where time really slowed down because you couldn't have a conversation like we're having, just like ding, 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 back and forth. You can't do that. So you really had to be with silence when you were with him, which was also a teaching, how to be with someone who's not going to play the game of tennis as furiously. But I'll tell you this, he chose his words and they mattered.
Yeah.
The things he said were beautiful. And a lot of times when he would be searching for a word, there would be like this light in his eye, like this glint of, he never seemed unjoyful to me, even trapped in that body that had kind of betrayed him.
Yeah.
He never projected a kind of woe is me kind of attitude. There wasn't a trace of self-pity in the man. So I think like he teaches us, one of the things he taught me, like he says, whatever is going on in your life is your yoga. So for him, dealing with this stroke was his practice.
Yeah.
It was his karmic, it was like his dharmic karmic practice. Like he needed that to learn his lessons. And, I don't know, maybe I don't know if that is the kind of lessons I need to learn, but it was kind of like my India talk, the ink talk is like my weird lesson was like getting kind of famous, like half famous, kind of famous from a TV show that a lot of people loved and realizing that it made me more unhappy than I thought it was before I was on it, and how to deal with the fact that a lot of people would recognize me or want pictures with me or say the wrong thing to me or say the right thing to me or just like me because I was on TV or hate me because I was on TV. Like whatever those things were for that time, and I still deal with it a little bit, but like that was my yoga, that was my spiritual practice, was how to deal with a lot of people that I don't know knowing me, and what is my relationship to that, and how do I be an honorable, decent human in the midst of that, So
yeah,
and sometimes people, it's having 3 kids and trying to get a movement off the ground, or how I talked with a guy last night. How do I be a stay-at-home dad and record an album while my son is sleeping? Like that's his yoga.
Yeah,
that's his practice.
Yep.
And other people, it's taking care of a sick parent. I mean, whatever is your life, that's what's really brilliant, is like there's not a mistake. Like whatever is going on in your life is it's your practice,
Yeah.
So.
We got a little bit of a picture there in that monologue, but where are you spiritually? Like you seem very spiritual, and you said you're Jewish, but that could mean, there's practicing and not practicing. But it seems like you kind of, you're reading Rachel Held Evans, you're sitting under Ram Dass. Like where does faith and spirituality, what role does that play in your life? It seems like a big one, but I don't want to overstep.
I think it's whatever lights me up or opens my heart. Like I'm open. Like I don't. I think it's insane to think one tradition or lineage has all the answers and all the cool stuff in it. There's so many different avenues, and there's so many different people and movements and scripture and prophets. Like it's it just feels like the height of arrogance to claim one group has it all. I think you can gravitate more towards your portal, that you're like, no, like Jesus really works for me as the extended hand towards whatever.
Yep.
But there's not a Christian alive that wouldn't be served by reading some Rumi.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or reading the words of the Buddha. Like those are not opposed to each other. And there's a kind of dirty word called syncretism or syncretic.
Syncretism.
Syncretism. Yeah. Which essentially says you pick and choose from different traditions, and it's kind of a frowned upon thing. Like almost like you can't commit. Like you're almost like polyamorous as a spiritual person.
Yeah.
And to me, I always thought that was ludicrous because there's this enormous body of a collective body throughout human history of people yearning and searching and weeping and gnashing of teeth and being kind and screwing up. Like, I just feel like it's fascinating to me, the spiritual literature. I will say though that there's this story about Aldous Huxley that I think about all the time. That Aldous Huxley took every drug. He sat with every religion. He met with every, pastor, priest, rabbi, shaman, guru. And he was asked at the end of his life, so at the end of a life of spiritual seeking, what did you learn? Like, could you synthesize it all? And he said, I'm a little embarrassed to say that almost all I can say is try to be a little kinder. Like, that's ultimately what it came down to, I love when Richard talks about like secret Christians, like people who are working on infectious diseases or trying to save one endangered species, and they would never call themselves a Christian. But to do something with great care and love and attention is honoring his definition of Christ, which is matter meeting spirit. So I call myself Jewish just because it's my tradition. It's the tradition I know, that I grew up in, that my niece and nephew were just bar and bat mitzvahed last month, and sitting in the synagogue and watching the Torah be taken out of the ark. Like, it's still very moving to me because it's my childhood. It's my tradition. It's those songs are in my blood, and I feel almost elementally Jewish, but I also, in a weird way, I feel this connection to Jesus. And then I remember he was Jewish, like he was of my tradition.
Yes,
he was a prophet in my tradition.
Yeah.
And I feel I will not, I've wondered, like, am I a Christian on some level? But there's something about the big ask in Christianity is that God incarnated in this one person called Jesus. And I can't do that. Like, I can't get behind that. But I feel, in terms of a person who awakened to a Christ consciousness and was speaking in a non-dual, healing, gorgeous way and critiquing, the establishment in a perfect way. Like, I think he was a massive world figure, and I consider him kind of like a brother, prophet, teacher, friend. Rabbi. In my tradition, in a weird way. Rob Bell and I have joked that we should write a book where I talk about loving Jesus and he talks about loving the Hebrew scriptures, and like how a tradition that's kind of yours but kind of not yours can inform your belief.
I've always felt that way about Judaism because I've been to synagogue a few times and I love it. Like, I visited and, very welcoming, and it's just beautiful. Like, everything you just described, everything, the readings, everything is just so beautiful. And I identify with it because as a Christian, I follow Jesus, who was a Jew.
And as Richard says, he went to his death a good and faithful Jew. He never tried to secede or start another religion. That he was, I think he was saying, like, the you're missing the forest for the trees. Like, your obsession with the letter of the law is missing the spirit of the law. And that's still going on. Every critique Jesus made in his day is applicable now 120%.
Totally.
And the gatekeepers of religion, which are doing it in Jesus' name, but the gatekeepers of all religions, are the Pharisees. Like, they're, I don't know. I just watched, did you see Brene Brown's speech at her sermon at the National Cathedral in Washington?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So beautiful.
I just watched it yesterday.
I love Brene.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
But, I really respond. I used to go to, when I was in San Francisco, I used to go to Glide Memorial Church, which is this church in the Tenderloin district, which is this notoriously very tough area of town. And they had, they have this choir that is like trans people, homeless people, addicts, alongside housewives, tech billionaires. You know what I mean? It's just this unbelievable mix of people. And I feel, oh, you're taking a picture?
Yeah, just keep going. Okay. I'm just going to take some.
And it's this unbelievable mixture of people. And I find it so moving when the umbrella is enormous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when the umbrella is like, we'll take you.
Yeah.
Because, I think Rachel Held Evans talked about, like, the church is going to be reborn with exiles from the quote unquote church.
100%.
You know, it's the orphans, it's the excluded, it's the marginalized. Those are the people that have the spiritual energy. You know, do you know Gregory Boyle from Homeboy?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he in his book, he talks about like, it's almost selfish when I work with the poor. I work with them because they illuminate the gospel for me better than anyone else.
100%.
And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
It's like, this is where I get the juice.
Which is why it's so frustrating to see what's happening right now at the highest levels of, you know, government, the kind of
rank hypocrisy of the worst kind.
It's so terrible. I mean, everything, if you look at the refugee crisis, if you look at the fact that Flint still doesn't have water, if you look at all these things that, you know, we just signed a $763 billion defense bill, which included forming Space Force.
Ugh.
Yes,
I hate Space Force.
What the fuck is Space Force anyway? Right? Again, I don't even. I'm not an authoritative enough of a leader in the government to even know if we need a Space Force or not. But we don't need it yet. As long as
people don't have clean drinking water,
and you're taking SNAP away from families, and kids have school like lunch debt, like kids can't afford their lunch.
Yeah.
Right, and we're fining them for it. We
punish poor people in this country.
Yes, we totally punish poor people, and there's tens of thousands of people in prison, not even jail, but prison, for smoking weed, which I do all the time.
Yeah,
you know, like, and yet we're starting a Space Force, right? And so, but that's all being done under the premise of like, this is, we need to take care. You know, even heaven, you know, in Revelation, even heaven has walls. You know, so we got to like build our walls and protect ourselves. And it's all being done in the name of Jesus, essentially, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
I
wild.
just had this interesting thought that, you know, they say on earth as it is in heaven. And I was wondering, this is a radical thought, but what if earth could teach something to heaven? So if we dismantle the walls here, the walls of heaven are dismantled. Do you know what I mean? Like
it's
a
parallel sort of.
Yeah. Like what if we could create like a non-walled heaven? You know, I mean, look, there's always going to be people that are dangerous, that are people, you know, but the idea that, you know, Trump, he uses genocidal language.
Yes, he does.
And it's so alarming. It's alarming as a Jew, first of all, you know, to hear this language.
Yeah, you guys have some history.
We have some history with that. And Brene Brown's speech at the National Cathedral, you know, was about the opposite of connection and community is dehumanization. And when we see this kind of language running rampant, and you know, I think it is on. I try not, you know, it is on both sides.
Totally.
You know, I'm way more progressive than I try not to be like a reactionary, but I also, as I'm getting older, I notice that there are some. I don't even know if I would call them conservative, but there are certain things that I maybe believe in that I didn't used to.
Yeah.
That feel more perennial.
Yeah.
You know, like wise things that have lasted for thousands of years. And I negotiate that with times are changing and we should change with them.
Yep.
But I also think, you know, there are certain hardy, sturdy values that do serve humanity.
Yep.
But I don't think when we twist those values and we make it about us versus them, you know, one of the things I really chew on in Richard, I was actually just reading some. Did you get the daily emails, the Richard emails?
I don't. I didn't even know
like
that was
a free
thing.
email every day. Richard sends an email, and they're beautiful.
Amazing.
But have you ever heard his thing about a huge mistake that almost every religion has made is do not separate the sacred from the profane? And it's a very tricky, almost like Zen koan kind of thing.
Sure.
Because how do you go, well, I think you know, feeding the homeless has to be sacred, and you know, a doctor molesting hundreds of gymnasts is profane.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are things that are like strike you as like sacred. And
there's
profane.
no sacred in that. There's no profane in
exactly.
that. Yep.
But at the same time, I've wondered if it's because we tend to call what we do and who we like sacred, and who is not like us, who's not siloed like us, who doesn't hate the same people we hate or like the same things we like, they are profane. So it's almost like our human limitations should stop us from making those classifications.
Yeah, that's totally true. That's what you just described is why we're in the shitty shit that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Is because you have the I'm progressive in almost every way as well, but I have to own what my side does and how terrible they are sometimes. One of I have a conservative friend here in town, great dude. And I shared something online yesterday. There was a video of this woman that was in Brooklyn, and there was a call to prayer from a mosque, and she was like making fun of it.
Oh,
I saw this. You saw that.
Ridiculous.
Stupid.
Disgusting.
It's just stupid. It's just so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, you want freedom of, religion for you, but not for everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, these are these peaceful, amazing people praying 5 times a day, something that you don't do. Anyway, so I just retweeted it and said, this is gross, disgusting, like, God save us from ignorant people, blah, blah, blah. It was a very, like, I didn't want to be too blasting, but also, like, this is wrong. I want everybody to know this is wrong. And he responded, because I had said that most of this is a white woman, or white-ish. And I said most domestic terrorist acts in the last 20 years, and especially in the last 3, have been committed by white Christian males. That's like not even a contest. It's those are the stats. And my buddy, again, who's conservative, who values facts and data and wants to see it, doesn't get emotional about these things. He said, where can I find data about that? Which my first reaction, which I'm glad I'm getting better at not acting on my first reaction, was like, dude, go Google it. Like, it's everywhere. Just Google white, male, domestic terrorists. There's article after article about this. So I went and found one, screenshot that kind of captioned all of it. And there were so many replies. None of the replies. There was one person that kind of said, hey, he's asking. Like, he's actually asking. Like, let him, like, help him if he's wondering.
Right.
Everybody else was somebody on the liberal side that was blasting him for not knowing and for being so ignorant and stupid to not see this. Where have you been? You live under a rock? Like, it's fucking everywhere, right? And I was like, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, you are doing exactly in this thread. I mean, there were some people that were just like being sarcastic or stupid, but there were people that were, going beyond that to now, name calling and just degrading my friend, who's an amazing dude.
Yeah.
Because he asked a question.
Yeah.
And it's wild what we're doing to each other right now.
Yeah.
This whole, this is sacred and this is profane. We've all got different versions of that.
And also, like, there's kind of a woke off. Doesn't Aziz talk about that?
Yes.
And
I've never heard it put that way, but yes, that is totally what's happening right now.
Yeah. And also, there's something so. I'll share this story.
Please.
I had this argument with a friend of mine where when trans, like, pronouns started coming up. I mean, it's still a big thing.
Right.
Jordan Peterson and all this stuff. And I have a friend who is a very progressive friend. I love her dearly. And she said something like, it's not their job to educate you. Yep. You need to educate yourself, right?
Yep.
And I worked with this trans actor on this show, Rise, that I was on NBC a couple.
Oh, we're going to talk about Rise.
Ago. Oh, sure, yeah.
It's my favorite thing you've ever done.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
It sucks so badly that it only lasted
I know.
one season.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
It should have gone forever, but I worked with this trans actor named Ellie, and I could see that people kept messing up his pronouns at, like, photo shoots, like Cruise and stuff. And I had messed them up a couple times, and I pulled him aside and I said, hey, I just want you to feel real safe here. And some of this is like, can you just talk me through the pronouns so I know? And the look on his face was like, he was so relieved. He smiled. He said, of course. And he just told me.
Yep.
And I was fine from then on. Like, I got it.
Yep.
And we were actually, I needed to make a request of him because he had said something that kind of zinged me a little bit. And we got to have a really cool conversation.
Yeah.
And it felt really healing in, like, kind of a minor, like, let's just deal with this now. And I was thinking about, like, when things are new, we need someone to extend an olive branch and to be, like, kind, Like, I had to do, when I started working with gay people and I felt, I could feel my parents' generation was like, it took them a while, And And now there's all this other stuff that's going on, and it takes people a while, you know? And I think that it's all okay, but I think that the more we can be like calm and level-headed
Yep.
and stop shrieking and thinking that people should just know. Everyone should just know something.
Yep.
Because it's not true. You know, we know what we know when we know it. And I kind of disagree with the idea that we can't, you know, that it's not their responsibility. For instance, like if I had a really good friend and I knew that person was a good person, and they were talking about buying a car, and they're like, oh, the guy was overcharging me, but I really Jewed him down.
Yep.
You know, and they didn't know that, and I would say, hey man, that's not an appropriate thing to say.
Right.
I'm going to request that you never say that again.
Yeah.
I think that is my responsibility to say, because I trust and love that this is a good-hearted person, and they're having an ignorant moment, and that's okay.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, we're far too. It reminds me. I wrote this Ram Dass quote down because it's the one that I've been thinking about. It's one that I always loved from him, and this last day I've been really considering it, and it really applies to this conversation. He says, when you go out into the woods and look at trees, you see all these different trees. Some of them are bent, some of them are straight, and some of them are evergreens, and some of them are whatever. And you look at the tree and you allow it. You appreciate it. You see why it is the way it is. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light, and so it turned that way. And you don't get all emotional about it. You just allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all that.
Yeah.
You are constantly saying you're to this and you're to that. No, you're to this and I'm to this. That judging mind comes in. And so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are.
That's so beautiful.
And no, it's totally beautiful that like we are, and this is coming from an 8 that came out of Christian fundamentalism. I never belonged there. Not one moment did I ever feel like I belonged in Christian fundamentalism. But
How
boy,
could
did
you?
I.
You have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But boy, did I learn some bad habits from them.
Right.
And I learned how to become an asshole
Yeah.
for so much of my life, and I masked it, and I got better at it, and it wasn't so, pronounced at certain points. But it was a lot of judgment, and it wasn't until the last probably 5 to 7 years in my late 20s when I started getting out of that world that I really started to see people. And even from 7 years ago to now, it's a total transformation as well. The last 3 years, I started this whole, Trump America era being a really, really angry, belligerent, I was just looking for fights all over the place.
Yeah.
Right? It's mostly online because the people that I engage with in real time, I wouldn't treat them that way.
Right.
But, you're hiding behind a keyboard. You can just say whatever you want. And it's taken me 3 years to really become a lot better at what this quote is embodying and what you're talking about. I've heard that so much as well, specifically about the trans conversation, is well, people should just figure that shit out on their own. And it's no, I value you 1,000% as who you are, but you need to help me. You need to help other people. And all of us have that thing, whether it's trans or whether it's being a Muslim or whether it's whatever, or me I have people that still, I have friends that are now not just ex-evangelical, but also left the faith altogether. And I don't half blame them because so many people are not representing what I think we should be. But I have so many people that are judgmental instead of asking me, why are you still in? Why are you still all in? In fact, we as a family have gotten more in. Mm-hmm. We decided there was a fork in the road in 2016 and 17. Do we leave this thing all together because we're getting some shit on us, some shit that we didn't ask for, we didn't sign up for this,
Right?
Or do we believe this thing is real enough that we need to stay in and be part of it and really embody what we truly think this means, the way of Jesus? And so my thing, which is it's not as big a conversation as being, trans or gay or, the kind of hyper elevated conversations that are happening now. But that's been my thing where people just they don't want to talk about it. They want to judge me for staying in. How could you stay in? How could you have friends that are in the Southern Baptist Convention? This convention that is just riddled with so much sex abuse and sex scandal. People that I know, Rachel Denhollander, she's a friend of mine, who, she was the whistleblower on Larry Nassar and that whole Michigan State thing.
Right.
I have a lot of friends that are survivors of pastors that are men that are still pastors today.
Yeah.
They've not been kicked out. They've not been charged. They're still free. And it's how could you still be friends with that person? They're part of this group. And there's so much nuance that we're not willing to do that homework, and we're not willing to ask questions, and we're not willing to just be chill.
Yeah.
Chill enough to like just see people the way we see trees, is like they are the way they are. Let's ask questions. Let's be in this for the long term versus the short term kind of rush that we get with saying like fuck you for being this way or that way, or for not knowing, or for knowing too much, or whatever the case may be.
I think about a lot in Falling Upward. Richard says that thing about Jesus was never angry at sinners, and he says, look it up. He was never angry at sinners. He was only angry at people who thought they weren't sinners.
Yep.
And hypocrisy is the greatest and most rampant of sins in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think a lot about when I want to judge. I mean, this is a stupid example, but I think, so-and-so hasn't written me back, like an email, right?
Yeah.
And then I go, wait, how many emails have I not returned?
Yep.
Like, how am I exactly the thing that I'm accusing someone of? And that's constant. Like, I could accuse anyone of anything. Let's say like, oh, you're hot-headed, you're judgmental, you're not giving them a chance. And it's like, oh my God, I'm hot-headed and judgmental, and I don't give people chances. Like, and you know, this is where you get into Jung and his genius. Like, we're projecting our own shadows onto everyone. So when someone's really triggering you, it's like something you've either condemned in yourself that you don't want to look at, or something that's unconscious in you. That's why it's so provocative. I mean, it's almost hilariously mathematical that Trump accuses people of the very things he's guilty of. When Trump accuses everyone of corruption, he actually thinks everyone is corrupt because he's so corrupt that he thinks that everyone else is doing it, because that's the world he's in. You know, the idea that someone would be uncorrupt is unfathomable. But you know, I don't know he gives it this much thought. I think some of it is just knee-jerk, reflexive shadow projection.
Sure.
But he's really, when he accuses someone of something, it's almost a certainty that he has done or is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think the antidote to all of this is like, I mean, it's funny to be doing a long podcast interview about this, speaking a little less, being more judicious about when and how we speak, and also honoring's not the right word, acknowledging and almost cataloging our own defects of character. So we know that we are imperfect messengers of whatever we are saying. You know, I don't know, like, there's that great quote, stick with those who seek the truth and run from those who claim to have found it. You know, anyone who has certainty in matters of spirituality or even politics, anyone who has certainty. Because, I mean, the truth is, like, sometimes a progressive solution is the one demanded, and sometimes it's not.
Right.
You know, and I don't know. My heart is more progressive, like in terms of like, why don't we help people? This feels absurd to let people wither away on the street or, you know, cage children. That feels inhuman and horrible to me. And I'm not saying, well, the other side of that is, I don't think there's another side to caging children.
Right.
Like, I think it's terrible. But sometimes there's probably been more austere conservative measures that maybe have worked at the local level or something like that. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I'm also not a politician. You know, I'm a storyteller, and my job, and I think one of the reasons that creative people get so outraged at something like the Trump administration is that our job is empathy. Our job is literally stepping into the shoes of another person and thinking, what would it be like to be you? And I think that we have an empathy deficit in our country where people cannot see outside of their own experience. And it's kind of the poison of capitalism, is this idea that like your triumph is my failure. Your more for you means less for me. There's this scarcity mindset. And there's also this idea that like, I don't have to imagine what it's like to be you because I am me. And the me that I am is all that there is. And it's a true failure of imagination that we're in the midst of.
What do you think about this? I think it's that people are. I go for the harsher. I go for the harsher judgment typically, and I'm learning to not do that so much. But I think it's because people are lazy, and it takes a lot of work to understand people and things and ideas outside of our experience.
I don't know that it takes a lot of work. It takes dethroning yourself from the center of the universe.
100%. Wonderful.
Which could be work to some people, but it's more of like a psychological grind.
Sure.
You know?
But it's also, yes, 100%. That's a great observation. But it's also like, I'm thinking just on a practical day-to-day basis. If I'm trying to understand why, if I'm convinced that not all people that own guns are, whatever, Trump supporting, like belligerent, the kind of people that we
deplorables,
right?
Yeah.
It's going to take work. I can say that I understand it. I can say that I believe they're not all like that. But then to really go find those people, because we all know them, and then say, hey, let's have I really want to understand your thing. I want to understand why you feel the need to have literally a closet full of guns. Like, what is it about that? Like, where did that come from? Did you go hunting when you were younger? Like, you went to the shooting range? Like, why?
A lot of them are Enneagram 6s. I found this, like a lot of the Trump supporters are security-oriented types.
Sure.
So security above all else.
Yeah.
Safety. And those people are actually very manipulatable and very susceptible to like propaganda and strongman arguments.
Yes.
Like, I alone can fix it.
Yeah.
Is like goes right into the 6's brain. And it's like, and also immigrants are taking your jobs, immigrants are raping your daughters, like all of that.
And none of that is true.
None of that is true.
Yep.
And but we almost have to, if you can have empathy for someone's wound. So like if someone is a 6, their wound would be they didn't feel safe.
Yep.
Like in their youth or whatever. So if you can see almost their childlike wound and their need to know that they're safe and that it's okay. There's I can even feel as I say that there's some tenderness that starts coming over me. That I go, oh, well, I want to feel safe. Like you know what I mean? We just have different ideas about how to do that.
Yeah.
I interrupted your larger point though.
No, I don't even know where I was going with that. But I think it takes, like you said, dethroning yourself as the center of your universe.
Yeah.
But I also think it just takes work. That's what I found in conversations is like, and I don't even blame, like I know people are tired and they have 2 jobs and they're paying off student loans and they've got kids and like it takes work to say, because again, you can say it, you can believe not everybody's like this, not all Trump supporters are this way or not all Hillary supporters are this way, but then to actually go do the work of trying to understand that, it takes time, whether you're doing it through reading a book or listening to speeches or actually going to meet people and having those conversations over a meal, over some beers or whatever. That is me saying, not just dethroning myself as the center of my universe, but also saying I'm going to put this in my schedule, right? And I think too many people would rather just stay home and like whatever, watch another movie and maybe that's at certain points, that's what you need to do and rest and chill, but it just takes work. And I think people are like, well, I don't know if I want to do all that work to truly understand where these people are coming from.
It's also, it takes like a heroic amount of empathy on some level so the progressive people I know, like the Trump hating progressive coastal elites, which is, I hate that term, but the idea that Trump is a truly almost malignant force in our society. And the people that support him are ignorant at best and conspiratorially complicit at worst. That is a feeling among people that I know, and I certainly am acquainted with it, that feels true in my bones. He feels like a bad human, a terrible leader. But the people who are pro-life and love, or anti-abortion rather.
There you go.
I don't like that term.
Yeah.
But they're anti-abortion, anti-LGBT, want the court stacked with conservative justices, anti-immigrant, all this stuff. He is a hero to them. Like, he's an absolute hero. They're the good guys and we're the bad guys. We're the wonky, liberal, professorial language policers.
No borders.
Open borders. George Soros funding everything, which is like the most.
His money's everywhere.
So
they said he funded that, like he's funding CT, like Christianity Today, and it's like, nope, he's not. Definitely not.
Know. Absurd. He's a classic. He's like the Rothschilds, like the anti-Semitic boogie. Every era picks another Jew who's manipulating things. It's a classic anti-Semitic trope. It's just like absolutely time not honored, time disgraced. But it's always been this way. Anyway, so when you realize that they see us, as the evil ones, and they are the good, virtuous ones, you realize that, like, oh, this is a massive divide. Like, this is a massive paradigmatic. Like it's massive. The bridge or the chasm between the two sides. One of the things that's been fascinating for me, I've worked, I don't want to go into specifics, but I've done some 12-step work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't drink, but I pop into AA meetings every once in a while. And I went with a relative of mine who's been sober a long time, and he was in town in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
We went to a meeting in Nashville, and it was packed, but it was filled with a lot of men. I'd say 75% of the men looked like they were at a MAGA rally. Like it looked like, it was in Nashville, but it looked like, and one guy was literally actually wearing a Trump sweatshirt, right? And I was, initially my judgment thing was going through the roof,
Yeah,
right?
your
I was
radar's
just
going
like,
off,
blah, blah,
all
blah,
the
blah.
lights, yep.
And then I sat there for an hour and I listened to all those guys share.
Yep.
And they all taught me something. And they didn't say a word about politics because you don't talk about politics there, and you don't talk about your job there, and you don't talk about religion there.
Yep.
You talk about trying to stay sober there.
Yep.
And especially the Trump sweatshirt guy, he was my Buddha that day. He said some real smart things.
Yeah.
And some of these other guys said some blazingly insightful things that helped me spiritually. So I know that if I'm sitting across from, let's say someone's like really working like an AA program and they support Trump and they have tons of guns, but we're not allowed to talk about politics and we're not allowed to talk about religion. We're going to talk about spirituality, 12 steps, staying sober, what their wounds are, how they were addicted, how they've managed to stay on the straight and narrow. I'm going to have an interesting conversation with that person, and it's not going to be tense. There's going to be more points of connection between us than disconnection, I suspect. And that's what's so great about that container of that model, which is like we're gonna be a transformational model that's not ideological or dogmatic. I mean, you could say it's a bit dogmatic in terms of like there's things in there, but to me, Richard's written beautifully about the 12 steps as being like, Richard thinks that the 12 steps that Bill W. conceived of are the great 20th century spiritual movement.
Yeah.
Do
you know who Joel Stein is? He's a Time columnist.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I just finished his book last night, In Defense of Elitism.
Yeah.
That book was par for the course for where I want to head mentally, where I think I am heading, hopefully. And I've been reading a lot of books around that conversation. He spent couple weeks in Miami, Texas, and these, a town of 600 people where 95% of the people voted for Trump. There's only a few that didn't. And what he found, he went there. In short, he went there sort of like scared. He went there to interview these people and get to know them. This was the town where the most people had voted for Trump out of anywhere in the U.S. Wow. Miami, Texas, and he found the exact opposite. He found friends for life. He found people that were just amazing. They were definitely hardcore Trump supporters, and they had their reasons why, and they had some, ill-conceived notions about immigrants and guns and all the stuff, right? So there was some true things about them, but what he found was people that when you stop, he found people that weren't looking at their phones all the time. He found people that could sit on the porch and just like talk with people, and it was a dry city, so nobody's getting drunk. You just over sweet tea and good meals, people were just being like living life together.
Yeah. And
it was the opposite of what people in cities like, New York, LA, Nashville, even though Nashville isn't a very, it's blue in a sea of red, like there are a lot of like snobby elite sort of people here that do think that all Trump supporters are, like the Proud Boys, they want to like fuck everybody up and like want to they're sixes or whatever it is that they've believed they found their hero. They're good people. I'm in 2020. I'm going to be I'm pitching a couple TV shows right now to a couple companies, and one of them is about, I want to like shorter form shows that episodes that are going to get people. We're still figuring out the concept and the idea, but like getting people together that wouldn't normally get together, and to find there's so much common ground that can be found there. There's so many ways that we can relate to each other, and it just takes time. It just takes a meal. It takes a few drinks. It takes the deliberate action of getting out of your friend group in your bubble, and just going and being with people. And here in the South, you don't have to go very far. They're everywhere, but they're not. When you get to meet them, you're like, oh, this is not a crazy person. They don't hate me. They don't even hate these people. They hate the idea that they've conjured up about these people, or this idea, trans people, LGBTQ, immigrants, refugees. But they're not hateful people, you know? And I just think we have to do a much better job. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about how do we get through, in your view. You seem like I followed you for years on social media. Like, you don't get into the shit throwing contests. You don't get into, you have opinions and you talk about things. You also don't shy away from things, but you do it in a way that is very respectful, empathetic of the other. And so I think we have something to learn from you, I hope, about how we get through this next year, because it's going to get crazy. It's already crazy. When things heat up, like, how do we not destroy ourselves in this next year? While still being engaged, while still being a group of people from all over the country and all over the world, for Let's Give a Damn, that, people that want to change, they want to have an impact. They want to move the needle. They want things to get better. So they're action-oriented people by and large, but we're tired and we're anxious about what's going to happen. And do we have 4 more years of this? And there's also a lot of people that support Trump that listen to this podcast too, that love the back and forth that we do. I had David French. I don't know if you know who David French is. A great thinker, but conservative. We had him on a few weeks ago. I try to bring on a balance, to not be too one-sided. But how do we make it, dude? How do we get through this next year in a healthy way that actually moves the needle while not backing down on things that we really believe in?
Mm-hmm. I mean, my short answer is I have no idea.
Perfect.
Like, I really have no idea. I don't know.
Maybe not we. How are you gonna? Like,
I could probably answer that a little easier if at all. But I mean, it's an interesting thing. Like you were talking about. Like, I think that, just to go back to an earlier thing, I think most of us think of ourselves as good people. I think the actual situation is much more complicated than that. Like, I think that we are endlessly complicated, and we are all capable of great, heroic, virtuous acts, and capable of great ignorance, blind spots, cruelty, indifference. So for me, I don't know if this is a reflexive tendency towards guilt or something. So there's probably a shadow side to this, but like, I don't think of myself as a good person. I hope my feet are pointed in the direction of good. Like, and when I get off, I hope I rectify and return. Do you know that Pascal quote? All virtuous men believe they're sinners, and all sinners believe they're virtuous men. I think there's something, when people say, I'm a good person, it's like, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
And I mean that by saying, like, you're a complicated person.
Totally.
You're a human being.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, Trump supporters on the whole, like, I know people whose parents are Trump supporters, and they're fantastic parents.
Yeah.
Really good.
My parents.
Yeah. Really good parents.
Yep.
Love their kids, would take a bullet for their kids.
Amazing.
Would do anything for their kids, right? And they've listened to a man who undeniably has shouted racist rhetoric and have voted for him. So, like, those two things weirdly can coexist. A good person who would never be cruel to a person of color on the street, but have signed off on this, dehumanization language. I mean, it's a very interesting thing that those two can coexist.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think Hillary was like this. I liked her, but I didn't think she was like this model of where, I thought she was better than.
She would be better than what we have
or
now.
Like, the thing about choosing between the lesser of two evils. It's like, choose less evil.
Yeah.
Like, choose the lesser. Every time choose less evil.
Yep.
So anyway, I just want to say that like a pitch for this idea that, like, I don't think people are good or bad. I think that in a pinch, when our back's up against the wall, some people rise to the occasion, and some people don't. And sometimes you don't know which you're going to be. Like I have this like how would I behave if there was a shooting? You know, would I storm the, I want to believe I'd be the hero, would storm, or would I do something so cowardly? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of person I am, and I'm scared I don't want to find out on some level in that scenario for certain. But I just think we're a lot more complicated than we think, and even Trump's attempts to paint himself as this heroic martyr who's only done good for this country and is being attacked by the media and the elites is such a stupid, reductive fiction.
Yeah.
That's not...
Yeah.
Even the idea that Obama was this messianic savior figure is also not true.
100%.
He killed a lot of people with drones and expanded a lot of wars.
Yep.
And George W. Bush did a lot to help AIDS people, people suffering from AIDS in Africa. And he had a lot of people killed on his watch in wars that were needless.
Yep.
So I just feel like things are more complicated. And when I can keep that complication at the front of my mind, it stops me from siloing or ghettoizing people into like, oh, you're this, you're this, you're this. Good tree, bad tree, instead of just tree.
Yep.
We're all trees,
Yep.
and we all make up this forest, and we're all emitting, oxygen so people can breathe and all this stuff. So, in terms of like how I am on social media, on some level, my lack of getting my hands dirty politically on social media, on some level, I want to cop to this as cowardice. One of the things that happened to me on social media, and I noticed this, I went on in 2012 on Twitter to promote liberal arts, my second film. And I noticed this thing that, and this is a larger conversation, I don't want to get lost down this rabbit hole, but people who watch How I Met Your Mother are so identified with me as that guy. So anything I say, people tend to, they're like, oh, that sounds like something. If I recommend a book, people are like, oh, Ted reads, you're like Ted, or whatever. And it's endless.
Yep.
It's endless.
Yep.
Or if I make a joke, it's like classic Schmosby, this high school nickname I had on the show. So I find it maddening to not have freedom to say whatever I want. So I tend to I'm a little more bold on Instagram just because I don't read those comments and it feels visual and different.
Yep.
But something about Twitter, and it's weird because language is such a rich area for me that I wish I was more bold about tweeting. And I also am like, who cares? I wish I was I wish I was on there less anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, I wish I could pull away from there. But I find that when I offer something politically, I'm inviting either an attack on myself or some dust up that I don't know if I want to be in. Just psychically, I don't know if I want to be in that day. Like, look, I'm not I loathe the NRA. I am not a gun person. And I don't want all the gun people crowding my mentions for 24 hours, like just because I don't want to deal with it.
Yep.
So some of that is, like I said, it might be cowardice or laziness or something. But I also feel it's almost like why I never got a tattoo, because I was like, there was never anything that I was like, I believe in this 100% and I will until the day I die. I think my mind is a little too elastic, where I think about something and I feel strongly about it, and then I'll go, well, I could also see the other side.
Yeah.
And I think that makes me a good artist and a good storyteller, and it makes me not a great pundit, not a great polemicist.
Sure.
So when I talk about, I really feel like my areas of concern as a writer and as a person, like I'm interested in, the reason I love Richard Rohr is because he honors paradox. He honors mystery.
Yep.
Remember in Universal Christ where he says, he describes the kind of Christic path of descent and resurrection.
Yep.
And he says, this has never been popular and it will never be popular.
Yep.
It's not at the center of our culture.
Yep.
The people who are at the center of culture, as far as I can tell, are like really planting a flag in something.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this is my belief. And I am, and the media will cover it because it's like, I'm not going to grab as many headlines by saying we're all really complicated and dimensional and we're all heroes and villains.
Yep.
Like that's just not as sexy
Yep.
to say as you're the villain.
Yep.
And I'm very uncomfortable saying you're the villain.
Yeah.
Because I think people are more complicated. I certainly know I am, and I also know that I am filled with folly. I am filled with impatience and arrogance and pride, and I procrastinate, and I'm not. There's a great Keith Richards quote where he says, you can tell me I'm great and I'll thank you, but I know I could be better. you know? So anytime
Always.
someone's trying to, deify me, worship me, tell me I'm great, it's like, follow me around for a day.
Yeah.
You're going to see
Yeah.
a guy who's like not killing it the whole day.
Yeah. Yep.
And the times where I feel like I'm dropped in and really doing it, it's like it feels so good, but it's also like how could I sustain this more? I get lazy, I get off, I lose the plot quite a bit. So for me to assume the mantle of righteousness, of piety, of a person who knows better than other people, I feel uncomfortable about doing that. That said, I write checks. I will go, I'm friends with a congressman in California, in Washington State, Derek Kilmer, who's awesome. I believe in him. If he asked me to come out there and do a fundraiser, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I support different organizations that I really believe. I support a girls' school in Afghanistan because I read Nick Kristof and his wife's book about Half the Sky. About girls' education. Like I believe in. You know what it is? It's like, to use a gardening metaphor, I believe in getting the soil healthy rather than like pruning the trees that are already, there.
Yeah.
Like I think like if we can get to the soil, and the soil is not, Trump is like a weird branch on a tree that like we grew some weird thing.
Yep.
But like what's in the soil that's growing a Trump? What's growing people who are so manipulatable as to not see any immigrants for thousands of miles and think that immigrants are coming to take their jobs? Like why are they susceptible to those things? That's a soil question.
Yep.
So for me, in my individual work, I've realized that, it's almost like therapy or even ayahuasca, like where it feels like you're hacking the mainframe.
Yep.
You're like going in and you're like, there's something in me that needs to be adjusted. I need to adjust the hardware here. And then I will be different if I do that. I'll be different in the world. And so culturally and collectively, how do we look at how do we get to this place?
Yep.
I mean, I think it's it's a much bigger issue, which is essentially, I think when communism failed, and the Soviet Union collapsed, there was this kind of acceptance like, oh, capitalism is now triumphant and forever.
Yep.
Capitalism won. It was the better ideology of the two. Now, that might be true on some level, and at the same time, we're also seeing a lot of rot of the capitalist paradigm.
Yep.
So when a lot of millennials say they're open to socialism, they didn't live through the Cold War. They don't know, and I also am, open to, I love AOC.
Yeah.
I think she's badass.
Yeah.
And when I hear her, I agree with her. I agree with almost everything she says.
Yep.
So I think that we have to look at new ways of being, and also that there's something a little bit like our water is poisoned. Some places literally, but I mean that metaphorically. Like we're drinking of poisoned water, and we're drinking of a system that says your success is my failure, my success is your failure, and that's as it should be, and that's as God intended.
Yep.
And it's like, no. I mean, Brene Brown says that in her sermon, that to be a good Christian, you have to stand up on the pulpit and critique systems of oppression and inequality. And also people will say, don't get too political from the pulpit. But like, how do you not get political? Jesus was political. He was a political critic, like a fierce social critic. So, and people that are covered in Jesus tattoos will tell you to shut up about that stuff. So like, I don't know. I come back to, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know is totally fine, because I think one thing you did point out is, which is actually very on target with what kind of a transformation that's happening in Let's Give a Damn right now, which is I'm a high energy 8.
Yeah.
So I go automatically for myself and for others to let's do shit. Like, let's get going. There's stuff to do. Let's go. And I can skip over the groundwork that needs to be done, right? The looking at the soil, there's poison in the water, like just figuring out why are we in the mess we're in?
Yeah.
Let's get healthy ourselves so that we can, so one thing we're starting to say more is like the first step in giving a damn is you give a damn about yourself.
Yeah.
Right first. You got to go there. You can't skip to 3, which is the larger, broader world, others, before you yourself have done a lot of groundwork, whether it's that spiritual, mental, physical, all of that. if I'm like, dude, give me some of your tea, and you're like, well, there's only a little left, if you give it to me, you're depleted, and I didn't get enough either. So we're both like screwed in that whole process. And then number 2 is give a damn about each other. And those are your people in your immediate sphere.
Right.
The people that you're going to pour into them, they're going to pour into you. Right.
Right.
And only when you've done that in a healthy way, can you in a healthy way go out and take care of others, give a damn about others. Those people are not going to help you back. You're giving to them, whether it's, building a school and, girls' school in Afghanistan, like that brings you so much joy, but they're not helping you back, right? Besides the, just the boost of like, I was able to do this, right? And so you've got to be in a healthy place, or else that's only going to last so long.
Yeah.
That's a very temporary feeling.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit, but my life sucks, or I'm not healthy. I'm not in a good place.
Right.
And so a lot of that was super helpful, because I think that is actually the work we need to do, is not so much going out and doing yes, if we need to protest, if we need to march, if we need, like, definitely let's go vote, everybody vote, and be very involved in those ways. But we have to start with realizing that we're all trees. We all need to do more appreciating everyone and everything for what it is, just because it's that way, bent and not enough light and too much light and kind of broken, and and just live in that space a little more. And the best thing that I ever did, you mentioned Richard Rohr, and just like how he's kind of embraced, not recently, he's always been that way, but more and more it seems like embraced the mystery and the not knowing, right? Like my healthiest self ever has been realizing that most things in life are both and. Not either or. And I lived, again, coming out of Christian fundamentalism, it was either or. It was all these things and people and ideas are bad, and we're good, and we're the remnant, and we're going to make it through, and we're going to be the few, the proud that make it through.
Religion's a worthiness test, as Richard says. Yeah.
Versus just realizing that, like, people are complicated. There is complexities that we'll never understand, and that should give us pause before we judge, before we tweet, before we, go after this person for this idea that they might embrace, and maybe they don't even know why they're embracing it. And just realizing that, like, there's nuances, like, till the day is over, that we need to wrestle with, versus making all these left and right, far left and far right, making these judgment calls, and being terrible to each other in life and online. That's how I've had wonderful conversations this last year over meals. I've made it more of a point to not have those conversations online, do more of them in person, have neighbors and friends over. I put a meal together with an Iraqi Muslim refugee friend of mine here in town, Binyad. He and his family were on their way over on Muslim Ban Day, January 27, 2016, when they were all, that day when he said no more in, right?
Right.
From these countries. So they had finally gotten all their stuff together after years of trying to get here. They were in the Cairo airport, and they got kicked off the plane and had to go back. Finally made it here. Wonderful family. And I had him across the table from, we had a couple more progressive people, some conservatives. We had a couple Trump supporters, and they got the whole night. Here's these people that, not that they would go to rallies, but if they were at a rally, they'd be hating on my friend Binyad.
Yeah.
And they got along.
It's hard to hate people you know.
It's so hard.
It's easy to hate people you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's also,
I think it's Brene that says it's hard to hate people up close, isn't it? Or think anyway, yeah.
Well, it's like, didn't Stalin say, like, one death is a tragedy and a million deaths are a statistic?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. But I also, to your earlier point, though, about taking care of yourself before you go, it's hard to give away what you don't have. So if you want to give love, you better be feeling some love.
Yeah.
If you want people to be more compassionate, like, we have to first be compassion. That's the thing about, we're not human doings, we're human beings. That's kind of a Ram Dass thing. Can you be the thing? Can you embody it? Because a kind word or a kind glance, like, this is what changes people's hearts. I guess I would believe more in Twitter political showdowns if I saw people being converted, if hearts and minds were being converted.
And it doesn't exist.
And also we've seen, and this is really scary, the death of facts, that people don't believe that one of the things, there's been an assault on truth and accountability, and so when people are literally presented with peer-reviewed facts, they have some sort of weird escape clause where they can say that's not true.
Yep.
George Soros funded that. That's not true.
Yep.
And that's really scary. I think about like these deep fakes that are going to come out,
Man.
videos of people saying and doing things they never said and did.
Yep.
It's really freaky.
Yep. Very scary.
Very scary.
We don't even know which is why we have to do the work now of pausing, right? Getting people to pause. And, I didn't know, I've seen Ram Dass in like videos and whatever, but these last years, like just being very slow because he had to.
Yeah.
I don't need help. Like getting, and then it causes the listener or the reader, whatever it is, if it's on, to just like slow down and not rush to a conclusion.
Yeah.
We have to do a whole lot more of that in this next season, I think. Okay, let's begin to wrap up. You've been very patient. This has been a wonderful conversation. We won't talk about Rise. I will just say that I'm really sad that's not a show.
Yeah. It was a show that felt necessary to me. It was a really good antidote to some of the madness, and it was it actually had a really rabid and growing fan base.
Yeah.
I have no doubt it would have been like a mid-sized kind of hit. Like it would have been a really and for some reason, at the last minute, I know it was going to get picked up, and then for some reason they picked up a show that now no longer exists. Also,
yeah.
So it was just a corporate, what's the word? Like, collateral damage of a larger kind of corporate reshuffling and everything. But I dearly loved that show, and I cared about. I mean, a show about a bunch of high school kids like in a drama department working through it. Like that
it's
was
like throwback to your like upbringing.
100%.
Is that part of the reason why you took the role?
Yeah, I understood. Well, I love Jason Katims.
Yep.
And he really wanted me for the role, and I felt like I kind of think this is like I kind of think I can do this role better than anyone else. There are certain roles that I feel like 10 other guys could do this.
Yep.
And then there's other roles that I'm like, no, I understand the Midwestern drama teacher. Yeah. Like I understand this world. I grew up in this world. I came of age in this world. I really understood it. So, it's a bummer. I have a new show coming out in February on Amazon called Hunters. That
awesome.
Is like a Nazi hunting show with Al Pacino. That's like couldn't be more different from Rise.
Yeah.
But I'm playing
not even in the same planet.
I'm playing this 1970s coke addict movie star named Lonnie Flash who also kills Nazis. So
I think I saw a trailer. You have a mustache in this thing?
And chops. Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yeah. It was super cool.
What else are you working on that people should know about? So we've got we'll link to your newsletters, which are fantastic. Obviously follow Josh on social media. Hunters
plural, on Amazon Prime.
On Amazon
February.
Prime. Can people still watch Rise? Is that on?
I don't know if
anywhere?
It's streaming anywhere. It might be streaming on Hulu or something like that.
Well, go find the show, people.
There's 10 episodes.
10 episodes.
It's really good. Yeah.
We were really sad. It was just we're also a big Broadway musical family. That's all we listen to in the home. Like our kids they don't know half the pop artists out there, or even a quarter of them, but they know
they can sing all Hadestown.
Literally, they love Hadestown.
Yeah,
Come From Away this last year, and everything. Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah,
that's where they learned. One of the first times they heard "fucking shit" over and over again was with Dear Evan Hansen, and we couldn't.
There's no going
art.
back.
It's art. You got to.
Yeah.
We're not gonna play the muted version of that.
Yeah.
So sorry, what else? So newsletters and anything else coming up?
Ben and I have the new
music.
Radnor and Lee record, which we're trying to figure out how best to release. We're a little behind the ball on it, but the record's done, and I love it.
Awesome.
It's a big leap forward, I think, artistically from our first record, and I'm going to put out some solo stuff. I have an EP probably that'll come out, and I have a bunch of film projects in various states of development.
Amazing.
I directed 2 films that were just great joys of my life, and people really responded to them, and I just haven't been able to direct a film in so long because once I got off How I Met Your Mother, it was weird. Like I had this 8 months or 7.5 months and then 4.5 months to kind of do what I knew. It was almost like having a school schedule. I had like this proper long summer break. And now it's just gotten a little confusing. I've just been acting so much, which has been great, and making so much music that it's a little confusing about trying to find the window and when a project's ready to go. And I'm probably overly thinking about it, but my plan is to make many more movies.
That's amazing. You're good at it.
Thanks.
Last question. This one is fun.
About porn?
No. Well, we didn't get to the porn.
We can talk about it if you want.
Well, let's do a couple minutes then.
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about is I'm very interested in becoming the best version, pushing people to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And porn does not do that to anybody. It doesn't do that. I don't even know if this was 4 years ago.
I still don't watch porn.
If you're going to be in the same place as you were
Yeah,
last time. But you told Pete, and Pete's very open about his, I don't know now that he has a kid and, he's married. Like, I don't know if he still is super into it or if he's like toned it down. I know he was talking about, he at least realized, he was back in a state of realizing when you guys talked 2015, he had gone back and forth, and he wasn't saying like it was wrong, but he was saying like it's not good for me.
It's not me at my best.
It's not me at my best. Yeah, there you go. So porn is just one of those things that I think nobody wants to talk about it because people do it behind closed doors. They do it at night and in the morning and whatever. Nobody's talking about it, but everybody's doing it. I
don't know that everyone's doing it. I think that statement is problematic.
Okay.
Because what it does is it normalizes something that doesn't have to be normal. So it bothered me when everyone said like, oh, everyone watches porn.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, I made a decision not to watch porn.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched it in
And there's
about
lots
a decade.
of people. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
A decade.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it easy for you to? So my story is like most boys, like started watching porn as soon as I could.
Yeah.
And it's kind of I'm super happily married for 11 years, 3 kids, love my wife more than anything and anyone. And then it creeps up every once in a while, when things get like stressful, like I'll, kind of like very mini relapses, and then she and I talk about it, and back on track or whatever.
Right.
And because I don't, it's one of those things that is it's one of the very few things in life, like more than almost anything, even more than like food and drink, that feels so good in the moment. Like you're having this meal, and then if you eat too much, you feel like shit.
Yeah.
More than any other example I could think of, porn like feels so good in the moment, but before and after, you're no better. You're worse off, I think. Yeah. And there's never enjoyment. Even literally, I heard Matthew Perry, right? From Friends. Yeah. He was doing some talk show, and he talked about like back in the day, he was looking at this story he was telling about looking at porn. But he pointed out he's like, I look at porn all the time. But he pointed out that it's one of those things that like as soon as it's over, like you're done. Like everything, it's like obviously for various reasons you're done.
Yeah.
But like you don't even like no longer 5 seconds ago this thing was amazing.
Yeah.
And then 5 seconds later it's like ew. Like what am I doing?
Let's clear the evidence.
Exactly. Like let's move on. Let's not talk about or think about this again. So that's sort of where I'm at. Where even as just a person who wants to live a moral life as a Christian, like I want to honor these people, right?
Yeah.
These people that. We can have conversations all day long about the dignity or lack thereof of this profession, but we have plenty of stories of people that have made it out.
Yeah.
Lots of women that have come out of this industry, and they talk about the terribleness of it, not just how they're treated, how they feel about it, and there's just a lot of indication that this is not something that we should be participating in. You're very correct to push back and say not everybody's doing it. I know a lot of people. I'm one of them that has said no, not without failure, but like no, I'm not. I don't want to partake in that.
There's also like the no FAP movement is kind of a really interesting. And I gave an interview with that organization, Fight the New Drug.
Yep.
And I'm very interested in people who are looking at their relationship to it, because for me, I remember like the Playboys and the penthouses. I grew up. I got my sexual awakening was pre-internet, so it was more pictures you could find or whatever. And my friend's dad had some VCR tapes, and I remember the first time I saw it, just like my eyes popping out of my head.
Yeah.
And I asked to borrow the tape, which I remember I used.
Your friend or him?
My friend's dad.
You asked him.
Yeah. So I think I had one of these tapes, and when the house was very clear,
yep.
I would throw it in. But I feel like for me, it was one of the things happened. I was dating this woman, and she was gorgeous and super sexy to me, and we were in a really good place, and I really was very attracted to her. And I remember wanting her to leave the apartment so I could watch porn. And I remember just being startled by that.
Yeah, you
like
have this,
feeling like, wait, why am I more interested in this virtual thing than in this real thing, of which I really am happy?
Yep.
But more than that, I could see that when I was watching porn, my brain was like cracked out on it.
Yeah.
And my brain, it was rewiring my brain in a way that I didn't like. And I also found that when I was out on the street, I was almost sexualizing every woman.
Everyone.
Yep. Old women, like young, like it was just not in a creepy way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It made everything, it gave it sexual tint or gloss to things that didn't merit it at all. And I found, it acted like some kind of drug in my system that I, like all drugs, not all drugs, but like a drug that did boost me up and made me feel a certain thing for a while it lasted. And then the hangover was pretty intense. And I think I stopped in maybe 2009. And then I went to Spain and I had like a 2-day relapse with it. And I remember that was the last time I watched it. But I'm so ferocious in my own world around porn. Like if I walked into some place and there was like porn play, like I would avert my eyes.
Yeah.
Like it's something that I don't want. And I will say that like I love naked women, you know, and I'm a big fan of sex. Like I'm a sex positive person. But for me, the experience of it almost like increased a sense of loneliness or isolation in my life. And I just made a decision, this is not going to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
Much like, you know, I've had a similar, you know, I've gone a little more back and forth, but I have a similar thing around alcohol where like alcohol just wasn't bringing out the best version of me. And I think, you know, as a man in America, like healing around sex is a really big task because we're so sexualized and socialized around this kind of, you know, just these tired tropes around conquest and what does it mean to be a man? And, you know, there's some really interesting stuff on the difference between a real man and a good man. You know, a real man is like this kind of, like Trump's idea of a real man is so laughably, it's silly.
It's gross.
It's gross and silly and alpha and stupid. Like I think it's stupid, and I actually think it's a mask for deep weakness and insecurity.
100%.
Whereas a good man is like, no, I show up. I show up for people.
Faithful, generous.
Exactly. And to me, I really sounds like you. Like I long to be a good man.
Yeah.
And sometimes I am there, and a lot of times I'm not. But like I said, my feet are, I hope, pointed in that direction. And there was something about being a porn watcher, which is like a secret porn watcher, because everyone's a secret porn watcher, that felt like I was betraying that good man. Like it felt like I was betraying the better version of me that could be. And I don't do a lot of tisking. Like I don't condemn people who watch it. But if people want to have a real conversation about the ethics around it, I mean, look, there's one thing which we're discussing, which is just like my own personal nervous system and how it relates to that. Then another thing is, and you know, I know there's like ethical porn and there's all sorts of different ways to consume it. But by and large, you know, I watched the Rashida Jones documentary, and it's just like it looks like this you know, repository for abused and traumatized young girls to like make a quick buck, and they're out of it in a couple months because they're really hurt by it. And it just feels like energetically, you know, is my watching that free video or whatever, like, is that harming these girls literally? Because the video is going to be up whether I watch it or not. But energetically, it feels like I am contributing with my energy and focus and time watching that. I'm contributing to this kind of degradation. You know? And again, I don't want to get into moral theological arguments around this.
That's a whole,
because I feel that's up to you. But for me, I thought as a visible person, it was worth going on the record about this because it's something that I felt really strongly about. And I also had stabilized to the point where I thought, I'm not going to, you know, like in AA, they say like, don't talk about your drinking because maybe you'll go drinking again and it'll look like AA failed. But I felt stabilized enough that, you know what, I really believed in it. And I've had a bunch of people who still reach out to me and say, I'm really struggling with this. And it really helped me to hear you say this. So I like being one of these lone voices in the wilderness. And sometimes I worry that it makes me into some sort of like prude, or, you know, people will think I'm some goody. It's not that. Like I understand the charms of porn. Like I get it. I get why I get why it hooks people, and I believe porn addiction is a real thing.
Totally.
And I wasn't there, but I know a lot of people who really battle it. You know, I have a friend who started watching at like 9 or 10, and he's in his 20s, and it's like he can't string together more than like 2 weeks without it. And it's a trauma in his life. Like he doesn't want to be watching it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute, by every standard we classify an addiction, it's addictive.
Yep.
So I think it's just a little more, you know, it's almost like we were all, you know, our parents were all smoking cigarettes in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then we look back and we're like, you could smoke on airplanes. Like I sometimes wonder if we'll be like that with our cell phones. Like you just had your cell phone in your pocket. Like other generations will this be like smoking? And I think that porn, we might look back on it and be like, oh my God, you guys were doing that? Like you were putting that into your psyche?
Yeah.
And it's hard to erase. I haven't watched porn in 11 years and I still remember some things.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
Totally.
not going anywhere.
No. Yeah.
So
they're engraved.
And I didn't go into some weird stuff. Like I watched like pretty traditional, but it's and also so much of it is the basis of it is, you know, this kind of punishing of women, this humiliation and degradation of women. And I also didn't want to be a part of that.
Yep.
I have my own, I'm working on so much around my relationship to the masculine and the feminine, both other women and my own kind of balanced polarities.
Yeah.
Like, man, talk about something that would throw a curveball into that would not be helpful.
Yep.
Is me being like a habitual porn watcher.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah.
Like I actually feel like it was a kind of grace that got it out of my life.
Yeah.
Because I made a decision and I just have stuck with it.
That's great. Yeah. I just think, again, knock on wood for sure. I think it's just, aside from the moral, religious component, if there is that, or just you saying, I don't want to be, there's the time, it's a time waster, right?
Yeah.
Like for people like the listeners that want to maximize, and even, I'm not saying we always have to doing something, but just we only have a short amount of time on the earth. Yeah. Right. Well, I talk about death all the time, and I think about it, and it drives me to be a better, wholer person. But like we only have so much time every day. Do we want to be spending that involved in something that is questionable at the very least and harmful? And we don't even know if this person is wanting to be doing this thing, and all the things that we just talked about. So I just think it to be a person that lives a meaningful life, porn just doesn't have a place there.
Yeah, and I also think that I agree with you, and I could also, I'd be fully fine someone disagreeing with us. You know what I mean? Like, but for me, adulthood has been this kind of I'm like twisting the knobs of my experience. Like, oh, when I do this, I feel this way, and when I do this, I feel this way. Yep. Like, you know, you're like, oh, I guess like having a large pizza by myself at midnight is not something that's going to make me feel good. Like, so you don't do that anymore, or you do that once a year or whatever. And for me, I just had to go, okay, like when alcohol is in my life is worse. When porn is in my life is worse. Mm-hmm. So if I'm interested in maximizing my time here, and I don't mean kind of a, you know, like obsessive, American way. I just mean literally the quality and sweetness of my life. Yep. If I'm interested in increasing that, another thing porn does is it makes me less present because my mind is elsewhere, right? So my mind is going back to the thing or thinking about getting back to the
next
thing,
time.
The next time. Yep. So it you know, if we hadn't talked about porn, I wouldn't have thought about porn this whole conversation.
Yeah.
You know,
you're welcome.
Yeah. So
sorry.
No, but I think it's a really valuable conversation to have around for men to have that are not. It's not religious. It's not shaming. Yeah. It's not a moral question. It's literally like, this can be dangerous for certain fragile psyches, and for me, it ate up a lot of psychic energy and emotional, spiritual, and spiritual energy, and I made a decision, and I've never regretted it. Yeah. And if anyone wants to talk about that, I'm willing to have that conversation with them.
There you go. Yeah. That's amazing. Last question.
Yeah.
There's one whole, maybe another time, some other month or year, I have a whole lot of questions about. And maybe it was in the Pete Holmes one. You talked about essentially minimalism. You talked about how you live a very modest life and you don't own a lot of things and you find yourself giving things away. That's a whole other conversation, I think. But we'll leave that for some other time. There's a lot that I didn't get to. But this question is one.
Hey, I saw on your Instagram. Did people write in questions?
I haven't even checked.
Oh, you haven't checked?
No.
Okay.
Maybe I'll.
Yeah.
I didn't check.
Okay, cool.
But thank you for seeing that. So this last question is one that I ask everybody, every interview I've ever done. This is how we wrap up. And funny enough, you already addressed some of it in the beginning because we were talking about spirituality and Ram Dass and legacy and kind of end of life and eulogy and stuff. I always finish with this because it's a good bow on our conversation, bow on the top of our conversation, but it also is, to me, this is the question. Because I want to live a meaningful life. Again, quality of life, not always hustling, but quality of life. I want to live a meaningful life. I want to have a meaningful legacy, a valuable legacy.
Yeah.
So the scenario is you're dead in a lot of years, and for some odd reason, I have been asked to give your eulogy. And all of your friends and family and the people you've impacted, both in a philanthropic way, and your neighbors and your friends, and they're all there to honor, celebrate, and mourn your life. And again, I've been asked to give your eulogy. What do you hope, in a few sentences, what do you hope that I would say about you on that day 50, 60 years from now?
Well, I feel like so much of my life has been about forging connections and about collaborating with people to tell stories that connect. So I feel like the greatest kind of, eulogy sentence about me would be, like he made me feel less alone. That somehow my life stood as some antidote to isolation or dehumanization or disconnection. That, that his work and his words made me feel less alone. And friendship, people I know. I'm scared of people and I'm scared of intimacy in all sorts of garden variety ways.
Sure.
And I long for those things very deeply. So, it's about my individual work. My work is getting in touch with like where those blocks are and seeing if I can let them fall, and then extending a hand to someone else and saying like, hey, I'm headed this way, like kind of metaphorically, like if you're walking, I'll walk with you, not in front of you, not behind you, like I'll walk beside you. I'm interested in community and connection and being a kind of antidote to the modern scourge of loneliness, which I feel, sometimes. I mean, I have a deep bench of friends and community and family. Like I'm surrounded, I'm blessed with people, and I can still get isolated. And so in some ways I feel like making art is almost like sending up a flare gun into the sky and saying like, is anyone out there?
Yeah.
Is anyone having these feelings? And the greatest thing about the newsletters is like, a lot of people are having these feelings. A lot of people appreciate hearing about like mercy, grace, and forgiveness. They appreciate hearing.
The last one was beautiful.
Oh, thanks. They appreciate hearing about sorrow and sadness as being this kind of grief being this necessary, inevitable part of life, and how that can grow us. They like hearing about someone who looks successful feeling like a failure, or that it's not enough. So I guess, being authentic, vulnerable, the kind of Brene Brown stuff, we connect at the vulnerability, at the wound.
Yep.
And all of that. If I have people watching or listening and some visibility, like I can be honest in ways that feel comfortable to me, and people will say, I felt that too. I guess I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not alone.
It's what's beautiful about that question is I have a lot of amazing people on this show, high achievers, Chelsea Clinton, and people that have done a lot and seen a lot and experienced a lot. And you would think that asking that question to that kind of person or yourself, you've done so much and your body of work is so broad that it would be something more like moonshot, like pie in the sky, like big idea. Like I want to, and going back to the resume questions versus eulogy questions, like, right? Was that the
resume virtues and
resume
eulogy.
virtues and eulogy?
Yeah.
Like when people are pushed, high achievers and non-high achievers alike, like at the end of the day, you don't want to be known that you were part of, a long-running, famous sitcom, right? Your legacy will not involve like people recognized me, they knew who I was, and that felt really damn good. No, it's I want to make people feel less lonely. Like that's a legacy worth living. It's simple, but also like super profound, and that's harder to do than getting on a 9-season show. I think to do that in a long-term, like long trajectory kind of way.
Yeah, I also think I sometimes look at, when you're in New York or something or Europe, right? And you see these war heroes like on their horses on these statues.
Yeah.
Or a street is named after someone. I mean, these were probably, enormous public figures that were very well respected. And like in 100 years, no one remembers anyone.
Yep.
Like, so the idea that you're going to have like some posterity or some fame that lasts, it doesn't feel... Like it more feels like I try to remember that a really nourishing conversation, like if someone reaches out to me and they're really hurting, I mean, even, people I know even, and I'm able to be a good friend to them, I feel like that's just as consequential as being like a Civil War general, if not more. I think that there's a modesty to what we can do, and that's necessary and it's good. That it's like whoever listens to this, like I really feel like if a couple people hear this conversation and something fires off in them that really alters the course of their day, week, life, I feel like we've done our work.
Yep.
And we've done good work.
Yep.
And the curious thing for me is that I was on this show that millions of people watched, and then now I'm making work. My films were, they did really well at Sundance, but they had modest audiences, but people still watch them. And my TV shows since How I Met Your Mother, I've done 3. I don't know how Hunters is going to be, but like they've all been kind of modest. I have many people that subscribe to the newsletters, but it's not 1 million people.
Yeah.
So I like the opportunity to reach more people, but like I don't have to be Beyonce. Like I don't know that what I'm offering.
Yeah.
Like much what Richard says about the Chris Stick kind of thing. And I'm not saying I'm offering that, but I'm saying like that there's something more modest in scale about what I'm offering, which is this. It's more of a whisper, and it's more of a like hug, and it's more of a like high five or a. I'm trying to think of something more metaphorical, but it's more of a like. A friend's sharing at a very deep, intimate level. And a lot of my movies are about friendship and about connection. And so I don't know that I think our scale is off in terms of thinking what our impact needs to be or should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and we're also seeing, passion, like a little, a teenage girl, like striking for climate, from her school with a sign, like can change everything.
1 year later, and she's a household name.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah. We don't know. And again, I don't think we need to be household names to affect, because I think, again, this is like kind of theological, but I think like God or angels or whatever transdimensional force is kind of present is very warmed and heartened by kindness in small acts.
Yeah.
And that
It's being faithful in the everyday little things.
Yeah. That's where holiness, I think, really is revealed, is in the everyday. It's in the grocery store checkout. It's in the parking spot dispute.
Yep.
Like that's where that's where Christ, matter and spirit
100%.
meet.
Yeah.
And can we dethrone ourselves? I think it comes back to that. And all of this is to say, like, I'm not an expert at this.
Yeah.
This is a day-to-day, thing that I'm learning.
I love it. On that note, let's finish this thing.
All right.
Josh Radnor, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad we made this work. We've been trying to make this work for
like a year and a half.
A long
Every
time.
when I'd go to New York, are you going to be in New York? Yeah. And then we'd miss each other, and then LA and back and forth. So now we did it here in Nashville.
But it's funny that I just I think you saw on social media that I was coming to Nashville for a couple weeks. You're like, I live here.
Yeah, I'm here. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. This was awesome.
It was really good talking to you.
There you have it, friends. Many thanks to Josh Radnor for spending some time with me and us on the Let's Give a Damn podcast. If you have any questions or thoughts about this conversation, you can find me anywhere on the socials, Nick Lapara or Let's Give a Damn. And you please make sure to follow Josh on social media. Just type in his name and he'll pop right up because he's famous. He's a great follow. He will challenge you. He will share music with you. And he will share insightful shit with you. Guaranteed. He's a very smart, thoughtful guy, always sharing really cool stuff. This show was created by me. The music is by our friend Propaganda. Please share this episode with people you like and with people you don't like. Just make sure you share it. We put a lot of time and love into these podcast episodes, and we want to make sure to get them to as many damn givers as possible. Just a reminder that it will take you less than 15 seconds to hit the share button in your podcast app, copy the link, send it to a friend right now. And many thanks to the Russell, a boutique, amazing hotel in Nashville that let us use their podcast studio for this conversation. If you're ever in Nashville, please stay at the Russell, because this is something you may not know. If you stay there, a portion of the costs for you staying there for one night will go to local shelters and charities in the city that help relieve the pain and the suffering in our homeless population in Nashville. They have a Rooms for Rooms project going on. So please stay at the Russell. It's a great space to stay in, and you'll be helping the homeless people of Nashville as well. I can't wait to spend time with you next week. So much love and peace to each and every one of you. Bye for now.